lunch? Good, good, good. And this afternoon in the sessions, an afternoon where we'll be delving into the ways we can all work together to protect trans, non-binary and gender diverse youth and ensure, I guess, that they feel safe to flourish and thrive, because we're human beings and we all should be able to flourish and thrive and be our authentic selves in everyday life. We'll also be hearing about the experiences of being working class and queer as well. But before those panel sessions, oh my word, I am pleased to welcome two more spotlight speakers. First up is Anaphylactic. Oh my word. Best known for starring in Channel 4's Drag SOS, appearing in the West End as well, and at the Criterion Theatre as well in the West End, aren't you, at the moment? Oh my word. Will you please make a huge round of applause for Anaphylactic?
Hello, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, those looking to transcend the gender binaries. My name is Anaphylactic, like the shark, only less tragic, hopefully, fingers crossed. You may have seen me on your screens on Channel 4, whizzing around the UK in a pink glittery van with the family gorgeous, changing opinions and lives through the power of drag, something that I'll return to later on in my little 10-minute talk. You might have seen me in the film Everybody's Talking About Jamie, available on Amazon Prime. If not, go check it out. Or perhaps our paths have crossed in Manchester's village. Or perhaps we're yet to meet each other. So hello, pleased to make all your acquaintances, and hello to anyone that's watching at home. Thank you very much to Manchester Pride for inviting me along today to talk. I'm honoured to speak, though I have spent the last approximately 10 years of my life lip-syncing through it, so please bear with me and be kind. It's quite nerve-wracking, actually, talking for 10 minutes. I know I don't seem it, but I am actually quite shy, so be nice to me. Thank you. I'm, of course, a proud hashtag Manchester Queen. I remain dedicated to this city, and I'm proud honorary Mancunian. When I was asked to speak today, I was thinking about my own relationship with Manchester and how I came to be here and how I ended up feeling so proud to be in this city and proud to be myself in this city. Manchester, to me, has always felt very welcoming, a cultural melting pot of different people from all walks of life. I moved here in the year 2000. That was 22 years ago, to come to drama school. I'll let you do the maths on how old I am. Can see the cogs turning. A happy coincidence, actually, that I was accepted in Manchester because, like a lot of people of my generation, I'd just watched Queer as Folk. So I first watched it with the sound down on my television in my bedroom, with the duvet over my television. So I missed a lot of the plot points of Queer as Folk, but I picked up on the visuals, and they were quite nice. So it wasn't until about a year later I bought a VHS video of Queer as Folk, and I actually found out that the village was a place in Manchester and not actually a kind of mythical village inhabited by gay people somewhere. I did wonder where the post office was. I knew I had to go to Manchester. For a young queer kid, it felt that by breaking away from my small town and moving to the big city, I could finally find myself. As we drove into Manchester and past Camp Street, I knew I'd made the right decision. It was a sign. I'd found my people. Although, record scratch, I hadn't completely. I mean, I hadn't really found myself or my place in the world. I wasn't really comfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of growing to do. It was the year 2000 as well, so times were a little bit different. We thought the millennium bug was going to end everything. Section 28 was still a thing. The Spice Girls were still my favourite band, even though Jerry Halliwell had left. And I was obsessed with playing with Snake on my phone. Now, at primary school, I was very comfortable in my own skin. I shied away from everything that boys traditionally did. I hated football. I was more happy playing in the Wendy house with all of the girls. At break time, I'd fantasise and play all my favourite characters from cartoons or TV programmes. Mainly Thundercats, I'd be Chitara. I told people it was because I liked to run fast, but actually I just wanted to be Chitara. When we played Neighbours, I'd be Helen Daniels, because why not? But all of that changes when you go to secondary school. So I learned pretty quickly at secondary school that I wasn't to stand out. Being invisible was probably better, to blend in and to not act gay. Which is doubly difficult when you're naturally effeminate and you get outed at school, especially during Section 28. You can imagine it was a pretty traumatic time. But by the time I started college, all that was out of the way. I'd done all of the hard stuff, really. I'd got it out of the way, and I was able to find myself, my voice, my identity. I started experimenting with clothes, fashions, learning all of the steps routines, and living my best life. But this exploration in identity was kind of cut short weirdly when I went to drama school. In one of our first classes, we were all asked to raise our hands if any of us were gay, which was a weird question, but 3 of us sheepishly rose our hands, and we were told we weren't going to talk about it anymore because we wouldn't play gay during our training. They would push us in other directions. There was a logic to the thinking. The thinking was that there was not enough gay roles out there, so if casting thought that's what you were, that's what you'd be pigeonholed as, and you wouldn't work in the industry. Even if you went for a gay role, the probability of getting the role was very slim. It was more likely that a more established, probably straight actor would get the role, as it was much more palatable for the mass market to have a straight actor play gay, something that still kind of ripples through the industry now, although times have changed slightly. The advice was clear again: don't stand out, blend in, don't be queer. Now, I'm naturally effeminate. My queerness shines out of me, as you can probably see today. But then I kind of listened to what I was told, and weirdly, I didn't actually play gay until 2010, which was 10 years after I came out of drama school, which is insane. But I got a role in the film Worried About the Boy, which was about Boy George's rise to fame. And you were in it as well, Nathaniel Hall. Hi. So I got to play one of his best friends called Christopher, which was an amalgamation of 2 real-life legends, Philip Salon and Stephen Linnard, and it was fabulous. I'd always loved the film Party Monster, the musical Taboo, so it was completely like living out a fantasy. My experience of clubbing and the village was totally not like this. I mean, why didn't we have anything like this? One of my favourite memories to date was dancing to Susie and the Banshees, the song Happy House, in a club made up to look like the Blitz Club in Manchester, surrounded by lots of fabulous creatures of the night. And it was like I'd actually been transported back in time. An acting tutor soon after asked what my favourite part of being involved in the project was. And I said it was getting to be in the makeup van every morning for 40 minutes and being made up to look fabulous and wearing all of these wonderful outfits. And the acting tutor said, but there must be more to it than that. And I said, I don't think there is for me, actually. I just quite like the attention. It felt electric. Now, like most things in my life, through chance and circumstance, like moving to Manchester was a happy coincidence. What happened next all seemed to align perfectly. I was offered a hosting gig in Manchester's village, just for a couple of weekends, actually, to start off with, because fancy dress parties, I always made the biggest effort. I'd always dress up to the full. And my friend, who was the promoter at the time, said, do you want like a little side gig dressing up? So I said yes. I kind of clutched the opportunity with both hands because I wanted to experience exactly what I'd just experienced in this film. And that was the birth of Anaphylactic. And it was around this time I met the wonderful Cheddar Gorgeous, who some of you know, and we started hanging out and dressing up and going to places mainly off the village, actually, and meeting like-minded people. So we were going to places like Mother's Ruin and Bollocks and Drunk at Vogue and having a fabulous time, just partying and living our lives and being attention-seeking monsters, really. And then, for some crazy idea, Cruise 101 entrusted 2 half-baked drags and a wannabe DJ in creating a night. And the night was Cha Cha Boudoir, which ran for 5 years. And that's one of my proudest achievements in Manchester, actually. It was a club for fabulous queens, kings, monsters, unicorns. We initially planned for 5 parties, and it snowballed into something pretty epic. We ended up running it for 5 years, 5 of the best years of my life. I made the best friends. I even had drag children. Cha Cha is one of the proudest achievements I have ever had, above anything else. It became a real community, a coming together of like-minded people, a safe space to be who you think you are. The night would work thematically, so performers would create an act responding to a theme. Even if you weren't selected for the lineup, the crowd were encouraged to respond to the theme through dressing up. So if you came dressed up, if you'd made an effort, you got in cheaper. If you didn't, you were welcomed with open arms, but you paid full price. So the idea was you could be in the spotlight or you could be voyeur. And that created the vibe. We couldn't have done it without all of the drags, the dancers, the artists, the rubber boys, the crew, the staff, the customers. Everyone was responsible for the glorious mess we created. I certainly grew as a drag performer and as a human being. For the first time, I was taking centre stage in my own story. I could be me. Drag for me really pushes into the nooks and crannies of who you are. And I think through play, we learn a lot about ourselves. And as queer people, we often subdue ourselves or section ourselves off in life. I certainly did, through things that I was told at establishments to blend in, to be more normal, to assimilate. And having Cha Cha and doing that every week, it was such a freeing experience for me, and I know it was for a lot of other people. It can be therapeutic even. With drag, you can decide the story you want to tell. You are the director, you are the artist, you are everything. You're putting your soul out onto the stage. I think drag is like wearing your scars, wearing your scream, so you can really tell your own story and work things through artistically, putting things out there that you wouldn't normally put out there, if that makes any sense. I think visibility is important. If you can, you should ignore all of those things that you're told. You should stand out, you should be visible, and you should be 100% queer, because that can inspire other people. We had people come to Cha Cha by themselves, and then the next time they'd come, they'd try a little bit of drag, and then the next time they'd pitch an idea, and then the next time they were fully fledged drag queens, and now we've got hundreds of drag queens, like gremlins. Which is a good thing, by the way. I love gremlins. So it might seem frivolous and silly, but it can inspire others, not necessarily to dress like an alien or be Queen Elizabeth or be a fully fledged drag queen, but it can inspire someone to just paint their nails with some glittery polish, or cut their hair, or dye it pink, or do something that they were afraid to do before or reluctant to do before, because seeing you can be inspiring. And it can really help someone begin a journey with gender identity. I think life is short, and we should live as many lives as possible, explore ourselves to the full. So I think be who you want to be who you think you are, take up space, be visible, and be queer. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. We've got time for one question. Does anyone have a question for Anaphylactic? Over there.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Bush.
You are, of course, a pillar of the queer community, the Manchester drag scene, and you've accomplished so much, and so many of us look up to you. What's next for you?
What's next? Well, I'm currently on the West End stage. Come see me. That's quite exciting. Yeah, I'm doing that until the end of April, and then I come back to Manchester, and I'm doing a few kind of gigs here and around the village, but that's all that's planned so far. But yeah, come see me on the West End. Look at me, I'm
sure
big
we can
old
squeeze
koi.
another question in. Sorry, I'm always one to push it. It's fascinating. The Boy George film. Something About the Boy. I loved that film.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I remember.
Me
It
too.
must be about a decade ago now or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it was filmed in 2010, so it's a long
Yeah.
time ago, yeah.
Yeah, I need to find it because it was on my Sky Plus and then that went back. So you lose all your TV programs when you upgrade. I think we've got one more question there. I'm going to seek that film out. I'd love to see it again, actually.
Thank you very much. That was really, really fantastic to hear. One of the messages that really kind of resonated with me was tell your own story. So what advice would you give to LGBTQ plus people who are struggling to find out what that story is?
I think it's just because sometimes I think performers put something out there and they don't necessarily know that they are telling a story, but I think most of the time they are. So everything that you choose is ultimately something that you're working out. It could even be the song choice, the whatever, but I think without knowing it, you are telling the story. So I think it's interesting sometimes watching something that has been created at Cha Cha, and then you find out that person's story, and you look back at the performance and you go, oh, actually, you were putting that out already. So I think people do know the stories, but don't necessarily know when they're putting out there. But I think sometimes it is something that's been processed, because a lot of the time with art, you're doing that naturally anyway. Or sometimes it can be something that's just kind of been there for ages and you just need to get it out.
Amazing. Anaphylactic. Please give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
And make sure you see the film. Everyone's talking about Jamie, of course, if you've not seen it yet. And if you're in London, get to the Criterion. You'll be able to see Death Drop there in the West End. Okay, as we move on this afternoon, our next spotlight speaker is someone who is no stranger to the stage. They've already joined us already, having performed at Glastonbury and Manchester Pride, to name just a few of the events. Will you please welcome back to the stage Tolu Ajayi.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my name's Tolu. It's like tofu with an L. Can we say Tolu? There you go. Now you all know. That's a bunch of people I don't have to tell in future. It's totally fine. It happens all the time. Hence, you get a line like that. My pronouns are he and him. Just a visual description for people who might not be able to see me. I am black. I've got glasses. They're circular. I've got a septum ring, pink lipstick on. Wow, I literally wear the same outfit all the time, I just realised. I've got a pink, purple suit on, and I've got an afro with a headband. Just because I know what it's like being at conferences like this, if you're able to, and you want to, maybe stand up or just sit down and shake it out a little bit if you can. Just shake out all of this stress and make a noise if you need to. I want this to be a really comfortable space. Like, if you need to get up and leave, then that's fine. I will come and find you, but that's fine. There's water over here as well if you get bored. So yeah, please do that. And I like people making noise because I'm an artist and this feels easier if this is like a gig. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in that respect. I am going to swear a bit because that's who I am, and I feel comfy when I'm just talking without having to censor myself. And I think a lot of the times we censor ourselves. So if you are of a sensitive disposition, then what the fuck are you doing at a queer conference? Honestly. About being proud. So maybe cope or again, just leave. And you can access the censored version later if there is an accessible censored version later. So yeah, Manchester Pride asked me to speak via a group I run called Rainbow Noir. It's a group and we celebrate, advocate, elevate all the eights for LGBTQI people of colour. You can make some noise for that actually if you want. Nice. So yeah, Manchester Pride asked us about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and we were like, no, we're not going to do that because this is tricky. And you'd been through some stuff last year that we all had feelings about, and let's be open about that, it's fine. But at the moment, we weren't seeing any sort of like transparency of what you were going to do in public at that time. Things have changed now. And plus, I'm me, and I'm always late, so I didn't actually get back to them in time. And so when you asked me again, just a couple of weeks ago, maybe not even, I was like, actually, I'm in a place where I can do this now. And also, I've got a bunch of shit to say, and I've got a microphone, so I can do that now, which is good. Not all of it is bad, I promise. Also, this kind of thing is easy. I'm the kind of person, as you'll probably recognize now, who can just breathe words. Like literally I talk or I cough and 500 words come out like, oh my God, I didn't cover my mouth. You've got a blog post all over your face. I'm really sorry. So I am speaking quite fast, but I'm quite passionate about what I'm about to speak about. But also sometimes I got here and I was like, actually, I've got nothing to say. And often it feels like I've got nothing to say. It often feels like none of us have got nothing to say. We have nothing to say. And yet we're saying so much stuff and not really saying anything at all. Case in point right now. And I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily have the graveyard speaker shift, but I've got the post-lunch coma shift, which is like if I'm talking and talking and talking and not only the substance, people are going to drop off and get bored. But actually that happens all the time. I don't even mind the graveyard shift, a slight tangent, because we are queer and all the cooler stuff happens in the shadows and at night and stuff. So if you've got the end shift, then that's really good. But this one is difficult. We might need something to get us over the hump. You might need to take your virtual poppers. They might not be virtual. I'm cool. It's a queer conference. Like, just do what you need to do. Just act like you're on something that's going to keep you absolutely lit until daylight. Like, that's where we're at the moment. We're in that kind of rush to the end, yeah? And we often do stuff that's off-piste. We do it in the cubicles. We often do it in the foyers. We have always managed to thrive and survive in the places that aren't necessarily palatable or censored. So it leads me to ask, why are we in a theatre? I'm not going to lie. We're in a theatre that made the conscious decision to be a court last year in the pandemic, and yet then perpetuates to be a safe space for people, and that doesn't sound like those two ideas marry up, and that frustrates me. We always end up in the spaces that have never been built for us, and yet we've grown from this space of talking in silos, in the shadows, in community, in the darkness, and like, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stay out of the light, but maybe we should think about where we talk and where we have these conversations and how. We don't necessarily have to be confined to the theatres, to the conference halls, to the GMEXs. Like, we can do this wherever we want, and we do it a lot. And sometimes I also have to ask, could this conference have been a video? Like, maybe with captions next time, no shade. I'm glad that someone is signing. Thank you so much. I don't know your name, but I'll find out. And thank you for the access that you have put in, but we can always go a bit further, maybe. Like, could the panels that we've been on have been PDFs? Like, we often ask in this pandemic, could that meeting have been an email? Could this chat have been a blog post? It would probably reach more people if it was. Because, okay, the question, if I was going to title this talk, I was on the blog before and I thought, actually, I need a title. So I think it would be, why are we here? Like, and you can be as existential as you want with that, or you can be as shallow as you want, but literally, why are we here? Why are you here? Why is it always the same queers that are so proud to be here? And like, taking it into my own work, I sit at this really tidy intersection of like queerness and blackness. It's all quite visual. But yet again, it is always the black and brown people that are talking about racism. And let's do a quick 101. Like, race isn't real. Surprise to some of you, actually. It's a project. It's got a timestamp, 1661. That's when race was invented by white people as a social construct to be able to control us, yeah? It's totally subjective. Like, I'll be a different race if I'm in the sun for a little bit longer. Like, some of you will be as well. So race is subjective and it's contextual. It's not a real thing, but racism is, right? The things that we've created, the ways, the groups and the ways that we've grouped ourselves, they're all kind of ways to compartmentalize and make it easier to talk about lots of groups of people at once. And that leads to it being much easier to target that whole group of people. So, like, again, I did find it interesting that even in the panel that was on at the same time as this one, it was all black and brown people that were talking. And we've been talking for a while. Like, I'm not responsible for racism. Black and brown people, I didn't make it up. White people made it up. So why am I always the one that has to fix it? And in the same way, I'm a man. And I don't know if I even said my pronouns before, he, him. Women didn't create misogyny, men did. So that's probably my responsibility to try and help to fix it. And I think there's been enough of this silence around, this is a problem that I can't sort out. I can't possibly talk about this because it's too icky and it's uncomfortable and I'm going to say the wrong thing and all of that stuff. But again, why the fuck are we here then if we're not going to talk about it? Let's talk about it. I think we've been in a place and we're really guilty of... In fact, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to talk about why I'm here, actually. I'm not going to talk about who I am, because lots of people don't know who I am, and I'm swearing a lot, and it's like, I'll make it nicer. I'm here. You can visit tolumusic.com, small plug, I'm an artist, always plugging, to find out a lot about why I'm here and what my journey has been. So I'm not going to talk about the particulars about the work that I do, but I do want to talk about my very long job title that I gave myself. I'm a multidisciplinary performance artist. I'm a community organizer. I'm a cultural competency consultant. That bit's new. And I guess all of that is because the more words you have in your job title, the more cash you can command, honestly. It's true. It doesn't mean that it's any less true. It just means that actually we're being a bit more unapologetic about who we are and what we do. And I think queer people have been really criminal at trying to squash ourselves into the talent that we actually have. We're not really able to walk in it because it's not palatable enough, it's not censored enough, it doesn't fit heteronormativity enough. And actually, we're all really great. Like, I'm looking at some really powerful and incredible people here I've not heard from in a while. And we just need to own our own power sometimes. I think that's good. But the reason why that matters, I guess it all comes back to this whole thing of capitalism, like, above all of it. It's a difficult concept, and I know we're getting a bit deep here, but I've got a microphone and I'm being paid to use it, so I'm going to go as deep as I would like. And I think we need to talk about it. We need to talk about how it's not going away anytime soon, so these conversations are probably going to keep happening, and we need to support each other in that. It doesn't mean that you have to be at every conversation. It doesn't mean that you have to be at every conference, and you're no less valued or valid as a queer person if you're not in every conversation, because this shit is hard and it's long. It's going to take a very long time to fix it, and I think we've been trying to fix it with each other in the same places for a very long time. So, yeah, even back to the job title, I mean, I could probably just go with professional gobshite, but it doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Didn't look quite as nice on my email signature. It doesn't quite have the same gravitas, but it's true. And there's something about a lesson for us all. Someone told me, if you want something and you're hustling for a job, act like a cis, straight, white person and charge what they would, and then charge double that, because that's probably what it's going to be. And that's our worth. It's not necessarily all about money. I know I'm talking about money a lot, but money does talk. And money is kind of the way that the world is operating, and that's how power happens. And so it's about trying not to be unapologetic about where we get it from and how much we're worth. I'm trying to encourage this idea of value. And maybe that's why we're here, to try and figure out what our value is, not just in these spaces, but out there, where we really count and we can really make some difference and change. As I said, yeah, I'm at this very tidy intersection here of queerness and blackness. June is lit for me, Pride Month. August is lit for me, Manchester Pride Month. October is very lit for me, Black History Month. February is a double hit because we get US Black History Month and we get LGBT History Month here. So for 4 months a year, I'm in great amounts of work. The other 8 months, I'm like, oh, actually, people have sort of forgotten I exist because it's not got an identity month next to it. It's just really interesting that this stuff tends to happen in silos, you know? I think it was Angela Davis who said there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because none of us live single issue lives. And, but yet we're still talking about these oppressions in like singularities. I'd encourage you to, if you see the racism, look for the misogyny. If you see the disableism, look for the classism. If you see the ageism, look for the elitism. And yeah, I know it all does lead to capitalism, but that's not going away anytime soon. So I want you to try and say something. Say capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist, ableist, cis, hetero, patriarchy. Now, all at once, the capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist, ableist, cis, heteropatriarchy. That's the language you need to be talking about, right? Because that's the only way we're going to be able to really get into coalition and check out each other's problems. It's a long phrase, but I would honestly just practice it in the mirror. I'll write it down somewhere. Someone will do a t-shirt. It's going to look sexy. Don't worry. Just the last few things to talk about, because I know I'm running out of time. But there's something about like decolonizing the way that we do this activism, this work. I think back in the day, we didn't necessarily have this main character syndrome. It wasn't about you, the individual. It wasn't about Tolu. It wasn't about Anaphylactic. It should be all about Anaphylactic sometimes. I'm here for it. But like, it wasn't all about these individuals. Actually, we did stuff together. And there's this platitude of, yeah, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, our child is the village. So meta way, it sort of takes a village to raise the village. I don't know. That sounded more profound in my head than it did just then. But yeah, our village has like grown beyond its cot, perhaps. I think our village is inaccessible. Our village is unwelcoming. Our village is a bit unsafe. And if there's no freedom for some without freedom for all, maybe we should start with the places that we feel are safe. Maybe we should stop talking about safe spaces and talk about brave spaces and gracious spaces. Looking after each other, looking after our leaders, even when things don't go so well. We're like, actually, if we are community, then we need to hold each other up enough. Remember that if we have value, then let's act like it to each other. Maybe stop tearing each other down. Maybe calling each other out and challenge can become feedback, and we can all just move forward together. So again, why are you here? I am a bit stressed about it. I'm just like, think about that. Why are you in the space that you're at? Someone just said to me not long ago, don't ever attend a meeting that can start without you. I love that. It's going to be my favorite excuse now. But like, actually, what is your place here? And it's absolutely fine if that place is just to talk. I don't think connection is a bad reason at all. And I think sometimes we come to these conferences and all we do is, it's the only time I've met a few of you, actually. I'm like, oh, it was the last conference that I was at. And I'm not sure what's changed since then, but I really want to connect with you. And yet, still, we're talking about the work and maybe not about each other. You know, that's me telling myself that I need to shut up. So yeah, there's something about that connection. I don't think that's such a bad idea. We can't just continue to talk to each other. We can't just continue to say so many words and not say anything at all if nothing's actually changing. And there's something about self-congratulation that we do before the work's actually done. Like, I can talk about institution, the police is one, some of the organizations that I work for will self-congratulate and say, hey, we're doing all this amazing internal work. And I'm like, I don't care, I'm not seeing it. So like, let's just do the work. Let's let the work speak for itself. And sometimes that work is around talking. Why are we here? Why are we not out there? We have nothing, we have nothing, we have nothing. The end of that song, I have nothing if I don't have you. And that's maybe a tidy place to end. If absolutely nothing else, I think we're here so we can talk to each other. I think we're here so we can call each other out. I think we're here so we can, all right, I'm shutting up, chill out. I think we're here so we can strip back and we can rebuild, so we can chat about how we can all maybe stop being a little bit less boxed up. We can stop censoring ourselves. We can be a little bit less palatable and make sure that we can all have fun, and I mean everybody. And maybe we can figure out the best way not to be here in years to come. It's a nice segue to what Chris is about to talk about later, but yeah, I think, have we got time for one question? I really don't. I'm around, you can see me, I'm in purple. So just ask me whatever you want to ask me, or ask each other. Please keep talking to each other, not just about the work, but about each other. All right.
Tolu, thank you so much. Thank you. And as we, I guess, segue into our next part of the afternoon here, we have an informative workshop where we're going to explore LGBTQ affirmation and the future of EDI. Now, to facilitate this workshop, I'm very pleased to present Manchester Pride's Inclusivity Development Manager, Dr. Christopher Owen. Christopher holds a PhD from Angela Ruskin University. He's the author of Visible Justice, which is an LGBTQ plus inclusivity handbook, and has expertise in intersectional systemic oppression and contemporary young people's media and culture, which is a mouthful. I tried to get it out without tripping and I tripped up. Will you please welcome, to facilitate the workshop this afternoon, Dr. Christopher Owen.
Workplace equality, diversity, and inclusion initiatives aren't good enough. And I think we know that. I think listening to the conversations we're having today, we know that they're not good enough. And actually, we're getting a little bit fed up. We're getting a little bit impatient. We're ready for change. We're ready to move forward. And so today we're going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about why they're not good enough and what they need to be doing moving forward. We're not going to just be here, yeah, to self-congratulate, like you were saying. Let's connect, but let's also think about practical actions moving forward. So this is an interactive workshop. So I'm going to start by interacting with myself. So my name is Christopher. I use he, they pronouns. I have a PhD in intersectional systemic oppression. I am wearing a bright green women's blazer, a black women's top that shows off my collarbones and my tattoo. I wear glasses. I'm white. You probably think I'm a boy. And I am a brunette. And of course, I'm very cute. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of a visual. And I want to be clear that this is an interactive part of our day. So I'm not going to just stand here and talk at you. I think this is like the #1 failure of a lot of EDI spaces is that we talk at one another. Let's talk with one another today. There will be portions of today's workshop where I will call on you. Hopefully you will respond. Maybe we'll do a little bit of moving around. So like, just be prepared. Don't get too comfortable. So how are we going to do this conversation today? I'm going to talk about queer oppression. Some of you will be very familiar with this concept. Some of you, it might be a little bit new. Some of you have come to these conferences and these spaces before. You have engaged in these conversations before. I know that there are people here today who have said to me, this is my first time coming to a space like this. I'm really nervous. I'm not really sure of these ideas. We're going to get you covered. We're going to talk about queer oppression. Okay? We're going to talk about workplace equality, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. That's what the EDI stands for, just so we're all clear. I'm going to tell you why they're not working. I'm going to tell you why they suck. And we're going to talk about what they can do better. And in order to inform our understanding of what they can do better, we're going to look at Manchester's history. We're going to look at the history of queer activism here in Manchester. What are they doing, and how can we implement that as well? Or were they doing, and how can we implement that today? And then there'll be a lot of moving around, there'll be a lot of conversation, and then we'll talk about practical tools. So hopefully when you leave today's workshop, you feel not just like, ooh, that was so inspiring. I want you to feel like, okay, so I need to book a meeting next week with so-and-so, and then I'm going to write this thing, and you're going to have a to-do list, all right? And we're going to keep that momentum that you're building today. We're going to keep it going moving forward from here, right? People are mad that there's no change. All right, let's get started. All right, so I want to make clear, I love, Tolu, that you said brave space instead of safe space. I'm all for it, so ignore this. What an idiot, whoever wrote this slide. No, I think it's really important, actually, when we're in conversations about equality, diversity, inclusion, social justice, whatever it might be, there's this real stress of, maybe I'll use a term that you've never heard before. Maybe we're talking about a concept that you're not super familiar with, and you might feel like you're in trouble if you ask. And sometimes you are. Sometimes in some spaces you'll be like, actually, sorry, I don't know what you mean by the word ableism. What is that? Oh, sorry. Right? Like, and then somebody will yell at you and be like, how do you not know this? Okay, my solemn promise to you today, I'm not going to yell at you for not knowing something. This is a space to learn. All right? I'm going to respect you enough to value the fact that you're here to learn, and then just, if you have a question for me, if you don't understand something, let's get through that together. Similarly, though, let's have this be a safe space for everybody else. So let's try and avoid hateful things, hateful questions, derogatory things. Please try not to put me down too hard. If I need calling out, that's fine. But like, maybe let's phrase it as a question, yeah? And we'll get through this together. But I want everyone to feel safe and secure, that when we're moving out here today, you're not feeling bad about yourself. You're feeling empowered. You're feeling ready to get to work. Okay? Are we all good with that? Yeah? Cute? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so can anyone tell me, interactive part of today, what this symbol beside my unhappy face means? Yeah, go ahead, shout it out. It does mean family bathroom. Thank you so much. Yes, it does. It's the international symbol for family, a man and a woman with children. Of course it's a family. It's a very nuclear, heteropatriarchal family. And yeah, it's a family bathroom for the parents to support their children in whatever those needs might be. But it's also an international just symbol for family. And we don't have an international symbol for a gay family, a same-sex couple family, a lesbian family, a polyamorous family, what does that symbol look like? Would we immediately recognize it? If you were to have 2 men or 2 women on that sign, people would just be like, oh, that's a men's toilet, or that's a women's toilet. We would immediately go to the gender binary. It would never be queer, no matter what we tried to do. That is nobody's, like, no individual person's fault. That is part of our cultural consciousness. That is the way that we think, not as individuals, but as a culture, as a society. Now, I took this photo in Sweden when I was visiting a friend there. And so, like, it's not just a UK issue. This is a global phenomenon, right? But you've got 2 very jargony, academic-sounding words here on the screen. Heteronormativity, this was a term coined by Michael Warner in 1993. It's this idea that society is insisting that everybody is straight, right? Insisting. And there's a real assumption, right? It's why queer people have to come out of the closet and straight and cis people don't have to come out of the closet. You're innocent until proven guilty. And it really is guilty if you're queer, right? Everybody is straight, must be straight, insisting on it. If you're not, there's something wrong with you, something perverse, something deviant, something weird, something dangerous, right? And we have a similar sort of system of oppression, and that's what this is. It's a system of oppression called cisnormativity. It operates a little bit differently, but this is a system that oppresses trans and non-binary especially. When somebody is born and the doctor goes, it's a girl or it's a boy, we're going to say that that's true forever. And we're never going to be corrected on that one, and there's no variation in that binary, right? Like, we're insisting, right? There's the one or the other, and we're always going to be right about it, right? There's never going to be any variation there. And that gender binary that it creates and that insistence that it creates means that if you go into any toy store, you are going to see that pink section, and then actually the section that's actually more colorful than blue, and it has a lot of variety. There's patriarchy at work, giving boys more chances, right? And so these structures are culturally embedded in our thought. And we need to be thinking about and resisting these structures because they're really dangerous. So when we look at the history of queer oppression, these aren't just like cultural ideas. It's not like an assumption where like, oh, I assumed you were straight, but now that you've told me you're gay, oops, my bad. Like, no, it's dangerous. It kills us, right? We look at the history. We look at 1533. Anal sex, I'm going to be frank here, anal sex got you executed, right? Yes, this did lead to the executions of straight couples, it did, but mostly gay and bisexual men, that's what it was used for. Then we got 1861, that changed to 10 years of hard labor. That didn't change until I think closer to the 20th century, right? Like, it was 10 years of hard labor for a really long time, right? 1968, homosexuality, it's listed as a mental disorder, right? Again, it's that narrative, there's something wrong with us, something that needs fixing, something that needs that we can be saved from. 1988, Section 28 bars promoting LGBTQ plus identities by public authorities. That included schools, that included teachers. We were dangerous for children. We were dangerous for the institution of the family, right? Like, that was the fear. When we talk about homophobia, there's this quote from Morgan Freeman that I loathe, that people love to quote at me, where it's like, homophobia is not fear, it's hatred. Like, you're just an asshole. Like, no, it's fear. You're afraid. You're afraid of queer people. You're afraid of the way that we break away from the gender binary, the way that we break away from your power structures of norms. And that fear is a fear that we're going to hurt children as well. And so we get things like Section 28. And in fact, we didn't get LGBTQ plus curriculum in schools in the UK until 2020. And guess what else happened in 2020 that sort of put a halt on all new curriculums in this country? A global pandemic, right? Most kids still aren't getting that, right? So we're still recovering from this period, right? 2020, okay, Bell versus Tavistock significantly limited healthcare for trans youth, right? It basically ended healthcare for trans youth, all right? That's since been overturned thanks to the incredible efforts of a variety of groups, a coalition of partners. It was a lot of work, but we got there. Young people today are still suffering the consequences of that. It's rooted in a fear that we're hurting kids, that we're hurting people by just existing, by just being in the world. I've got for you, like, 4 or 5 historical events. It might feel like, okay, well, 2020, that was recent, but we're done now. That was the pandemic. It was a rough time. We're moving forward now, right? So here's a bunch of headlines from the past couple months. It's not so cute out there. Heteronormativity and cisnormativity are killing us and killing us all over the world. These all come from either America or the UK. That's it, okay? And they're all recent. mostly, if you look at the UK ones, we're attacking trans people, right? Faye will be speaking later today. Please go listen to her talk. She's brilliant. She'll probably be addressing these things. I know her book does. We need to be really concerned here, folks. So the fight needs to happen. The change needs to happen. Okay, so I talked about the legislative issues. I've talked about the historical issues. I'm going to turn it back to the room now. What about just the day-to-day issues, the lived experience stuff, the stuff that's casual, the microaggressions, the little things that just impact you in the day-to-day life? Can anyone think of any examples and share them? Yeah, we got a quick one right here.
People telling me they're proud that I'm trans.
That they're proud. Why are they proud?
Exactly. Like, I'm just interested in being myself. Someone doesn't have to sit next to me. Like, oh, I'm really proud that you came out as trans and you did that journey. Like, I'm so happy. Like, well, I don't know you. Why are you approaching me?
It's there's a pity there. There's almost like an infantilization there. There's like a, oh, bless you, I'm so proud of you, like as if you just living your truth and being your truth is something to give you a pat on the back for. Yeah, oh, bless your heart. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That's really, really powerful. Can anybody else think of any examples? Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I'm non-binary, they, them pronouns.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very loud though.
It's an access thing.
I guess I'll use. Oh yeah, sorry, it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, and I just like constantly get misgendered, and it's like people don't know like what non-binary is outside of like obviously groups like this where people actually do, which is refreshing. But it's just exhausting, just correct it, and like sometimes you don't have the emotional energy to correct people. Actually, sometimes I'm like, I actually don't want to educate you today. Just bloody Google it, for Christ's sake.
Right? Thank you for sharing. That's a really, really valid point, and something that I think a lot of people here can probably relate to. I definitely can as a gender fluid person. I told my sister that I was gender fluid, and she was like, oh my gosh, me too. Sometimes I want to wear like a blouse or a blazer, and sometimes I want to wear a sundress. And I was like, ooh, super cute, not the same. So... You know, like, yeah, I totally feel you there. Thank you. We're not walking encyclopedias. Yeah, over here. Thank you.
Yeah, filling in forms as like a lesbian parent and my partner is a woman. Whenever we fill in forms, there's never a box for us. We turned to A&E with our daughter and they went, who's mum? And we were like, oh, both of us. And she said, oh, well, what do I put down? Like, I don't know. That's for you to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. Filling out forms is exhausting. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I'm sorry I have to deal with that. I'll do one more. Right here in the wheelchair. Yes, please. We're coming.
I think it's two combined issues. The assumption that the friend or PA who is male that's come with me is my partner because I can't possibly have be a bi person. So therefore, when was I pregnant? So therefore, can I have a scan? So it's a very complicated story, but it was an interesting day. But also, when you work with disabled people, especially those with learning disabilities, people tell you that they can't possibly know what their identity is because how could they must be straight because they wouldn't know anything else. And you're like, no, they do because we don't all sit under blankets. Like, I'm sorry, it's this idea we sit under blankets and drink tea. But yeah, I hope that explained it clearly enough.
It did very well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that intersectional example as well. So thank you so much for that. There are loads. We could go all day, folks. We could go all day about just the little ways that we are not just like hurt, but like literally erased. Erasure is an act of cultural genocide, right? It is a way of getting rid of us. And to be frank, this is the thing that we need to be addressing. This is the work that we need to be working against. So we have 60 years of workplace EDI, all right? We started creating EDI initiatives in businesses in the 1960s as part of the civil rights movement. We had a bunch of laws change in this country in that period around discrimination. It's when our sort of first laws came into place, and businesses and organizations were like, oh, shoot, we don't know how to do this. So they create, like a whole industry was created around EDI. UK businesses spend billions of pounds a year on this crap, guys. Folks, sorry. And we've been doing it for 60 years. So how's that been going? Terribly. We have, of the top CEOs in this country, 94% of them are white men. Shocker that. And guess what? The other 6 are white women, right? Actually, there are no black CEOs or people of color who are CEOs in the top 100 businesses in this country. Not one, right? All of them white. 35% of LGBTQ plus staff hide their identity at work. 40% of LGBT employees and 55% of trans employees experience workplace harassment. That gets worse. 10% of queer, trans, and intersex people of color have been physically attacked in the workplace. I posit to you all today that workplace equality, diversity, and inclusion initiatives are not doing enough, and that there is much more work to be done, and that, frankly, we need to be thinking really hard about what we're currently doing and what we could be doing differently. So, in theory, EDI initiatives should be affirming queer identities. It's part of the title of my talk, right? It should be, in theory, affirming these groups, right? It should be like, come and work with us, get a job with us, you're welcome to join us, right? But in practice, we need to just hang on a minute and pause and look and be like, well, actually, what queer people are welcome into the room? It's not queer people, it's LGBTQ plus people. There's a very neat, white, non-disabled, cis, middle-class LGBTQ plus person that's welcome into these spaces. And anyone who isn't part of that sort of framework isn't welcome into those spaces. Their queerness is not affirmed. Being queer isn't affirmed. The number of jobs I've had where I'm allowed to be gay, but I'm not allowed to be queer with a capital Q is like really serious. And I've worked for LGBTQ plus organizations in the past where that's been the case. So we need to be asking ourselves, who are we willing to affirm in this work, and who are we leaving behind and why? So Faye, in her brilliant book, The Transgender Issue, An Argument for Justice, I've pulled a quote from it. I'm just going to read this for you folks, and then firmly push you to buy this book, okay? This is specifically about trans people. I do think it applies to a wide variety of queer people, but especially trans people. Trans people and their political demands are acceptable only insofar as accepting them allows better participation in the capitalist system. This, as the writer and performance artist Ray Fillar says, divides liberation movements. The suit wearers, right, they come in and then they take over. It happened to the women's liberation, to the gay liberation front, to the anti-AIDS movement, to Black Power. Fillar suggests that this development leads to more palatable trans people, pulling the ladder up behind them and leaving their less acceptable comrades behind. Movements are taken out of the hands of the radical, the angry, non-respectable, non-conforming people who did the years of unrewarded hard graft to make it all happen. Then gradually they are overrun by small-minded career activists out to make a name for themselves. I can really actually relate to that. I'm quite palatable usually. I wear a suit. I'm a career activist. I have a PhD in oppression. I'm doing this for a living. It's my job. I can see it in the work that I can do. I can see it in the spaces that I occupy. People are asking me to facilitate this. No, enough's enough. We're done with this now. Thank you. What is happening here? All right, what's going on here? When we think about resistance, there are actually 3 key approaches that you can take to resistance. One is revolution. Burn it all down, start again. The second one is reform. That's taking what you've currently got and changing it. And then the third one is assimilate. Just join in, right? And that's what EDI initiatives are asking for. They're asking for assimilation. They're asking not for us to change the system, but just for us to participate in it. This is a political concept that I'm going to encourage you all to write down called neoliberalism. Some of you will be familiar with this concept, some of you won't be. I recommend you get to know it. But here's a quote from some really important anti-racism scholars called Zamudio and Rios, where they describe neoliberalism as a principle that works to deny the existence of the structural disadvantages of people of color while simultaneously obscuring the structural advantages or embedded racial privilege of whites. Take a photo of this if you'd like. So LGBTQ plus people are welcome to join an organization. They get a job there. There are no policies or procedures in place to recognize them or their specific needs. For example, their specific need might be time off to go attend their gender-affirming surgeries, appointments with doctors, so on and so forth. That might be something that they need as an employee, right? But they're not given that. So then they have to take all of their sick days for these things. They have to book their holidays for these things. They get in trouble because, these appointments actually get moved around quite a lot. It's quite a difficult procedure, right? And then they get fired, or they don't get promoted, or they're not seen as equally as recognizable. And they're told it's their fault right, for not being a good worker, for not coming to work more frequently, rather than the employer's fault for not facilitating that trans person's very specific needs. This is what we need to be addressing. This is what we need to change. We need to push back against this assimilationist approach. Because when we don't, we actually create quite a lot of harm. So I hear people talk about diversity all the time, right? EDI, one of those is D, diversity, right? When you know, right, when you have this idea like, oh, we need to have more diversity, but we don't know why we need to have diversity, we don't understand that the point is, like racial liberation, for example, then we create things like this. You've got your super elite wealthy CEO, your white privileged managers, for example, and then your marginalized workers, the workers who have the lowest pay, the least amount of job security, the least number of opportunities, right? We got loads of diversity here, folks. We got twice as many marginalized staff as anybody else, and yet all we've managed to accomplish here is recreating historic hierarchies of white supremacy or patriarchy and so on and so forth. All we've done is we've remade it. We've reinstilled it. Not good enough. We need to push back against structures like this, right? We need to say, enough's enough. This isn't good enough. So I'm going to introduce you to a concept by my favorite Black feminist scholar, Patricia Hill Collins. Patricia Hill Collins wrote a book called Black Feminist Thought. In the year, there's a second edition that came out in the year 2000 that I recommend everybody read. It's really, really powerful work. And when you read this book, you're going to learn that systemic oppression can really be understood, when you really break it down, it can just simply be understood as how easy or difficult it is to access an opportunity. Now, that opportunity can vary. It could be the opportunity to get a promotion at work, break through that glass ceiling. It could be the opportunity to walk home from work at night safely without fear of being attacked. It could be the opportunity to call the police, and they're actually going to come and help you, and they're not going to shoot you in your own home, right? There's a variety of different opportunities in this world, but whether or not you're privileged or oppressed will determine how easy or how difficult it is for you to access certain opportunities. And this is really actually quite complicated. It's okay if you're a little bit confused right now. It's okay if you feel a little bit overwhelmed. It's confusing. It's a lot. It's an entire system of oppression. And so Patricia Hill Collins, to help us understand this, she came up with a theory called the matrix of domination. She breaks oppression into 4 key areas. The first is called the structural domain of oppression. It's about the ways that institutions interlock. So think about like how healthcare interlocks with the judicial system, interlocks with the education system, and now all of a sudden we have an understanding of pleads of insanity for crimes, for example. How do we come to that definition, right? All of these institutions have to work together in order to decide mental health in our communities, right? And the criminalization of mental health in our communities, right? There's a system of institutional collaboration here. The second one is bureaucratic structures. It's that hierarchy that I just showed you with the CEO and the workers, right? The way that your workplace has policies and procedures and acts of surveillance to make sure that you're a docile worker who does what they're told, right? Like that you fit that assimilationist bill, right? That's what the bureaucratic structures are. That's called the disciplinary domain of oppression. The third one, a lot of Marxists will be familiar with this term, it's called hegemony. Hegemony is about cultural belief systems. We've been talking about that a lot today. That's that symbol of family that we showed before, right? This is just the way that we think as a society. Those ways that we think tend to be very hierarchical, or they tend to erase full groups of people. And finally, those everyday interactions, or the interpersonal domain of oppression, right? Those lived experiences like we were sharing before, the microaggressions, the day-to-day stuff. So these are 4 areas of oppression, right? And you can apply this to a wide variety, right? You can apply this to white supremacy. You can apply this to patriarchy. You can apply this to heteronormativity and cisnormativity. They will look different for all 4, but you can apply that same structure to all of them, right? So all 4 of these areas, we can break them down to understand them a little bit easier. That first one, it organizes oppression. The second one, it manages it. The third one justifies it. And the last one is how we experience it. So when we're thinking about resistance work, we can do that too, but in reverse. We can do social organizing. We can have bureaucratic management. We can justify resistance, and we can experience inclusion, right? You just flip it on its head, push back against it, okay? So are we doing these things? All 4 of these areas of oppression uphold one another. All 4 of them, they work in a matrix, which means that they're all happening simultaneously at the same time, holding each other up. Are we then resisting all 4 of them at the same time? For workplace EDI, the answer is a firm no, all right? The bureaucratic management, okay, we're kind of getting started. We have EDI managers, right? Like that's a real job title. Lots of workplaces have them, lots of them don't, but that's what that is. It's the bureaucratic management for equality. Are they doing enough? No, they're not doing enough because they're not ticking the other 4 boxes, but we've got that in place. Thank God we've got it in place, okay? We just got to amp it up a bit. Experiencing inclusion. All right, maybe you've got unconscious bias training, something like that. We got call-out culture. We're trying, guys. We're trying to get there. We're working our way forward, but we're not doing quite enough still. We are definitely not justifying resistance, right? We are definitely not changing cultural ideologies. We talk about during Pride all of that pink washing of corporations, right? Part of my job is making sure that that's authentic. That's my role at Manchester Pride, is holding our corporate sort of sponsors and partners and members accountable to that and looking for that. Well, how are you shifting culture, really genuinely? And then the social organizing. We are not working together enough, folks. We're not. So that's what we're going to talk about primarily here today, okay? And we're going to do that. We're going to learn how to do that from looking at Manchester's LGBTQ+ activist history. So here are 3 really quick and easy examples, which you're probably familiar with. So the first one, Golden Building. I promise it's not a Trump Tower. This is in 1978, the Manchester Gay Alliance opened the Gay Centre. This was later moved to Sydney Street and renamed the Joyce Leyland LGBT Centre. It was renamed because there weren't enough spaces and places renamed after queer women, and this was something that was really, really important, and I'm really proud that they did do that. And it is the only purpose-built LGBT centre in this country. Right? We have it here in Manchester. They run a variety of really important programming and host a variety of really important groups, including Rainbow Noir and the Proud Trust, of course. Really valuable space, and you should check it out. They've got a cafe there. Go be in that queer space. It's not in the village. If you don't feel comfortable in the village, here's an alternative for you. Really, really valuable. That was created not by an individual, but by groups of people working together. In February 1998, Manchester City Council, famously pro-LGBTQ+ at the time, was really angry about Section 28. They were no longer going to be allowed to promote and support the LGBTQ+ community, despite having LGBTQ+ members themselves, and so they worked with the local community to protest Section 28. 20,000 people protested in Albert Square. Not just queer people, cishet people too. We all came together, we protested. It is still remembered to this day as one of the most important protests and one of the biggest protests in the UK's history. We should be very, very proud of this. Again, a collaborative effort. And then finally, ACT UP Manchester. Now, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power was originally started in America, yes, but it did move to the UK, and Manchester's sort of group was really quite active and did a lot of work together to protest anti-AIDS and HIV work, including throwing condoms over the walls of Strangeways prison and blockading Taxico petrol stations when the company demanded mandatory HIV tests as part of their hiring process. It's got coalition in the name, folks, right? The collaboration has been happening. And the collaboration has been happening across, by Manchester's people, by Mancunians in Manchester for a very long time. Here is a very short list of national organizations that are working hard to support the LGBTQ+ community that were all started in Manchester or by Mancunians, all right? This is not a group of pictures of individuals. These are groups of people working together. And I think that's something to be really, really quite proud of, yeah? So we need to be addressing issues, right? Those groups that we saw before weren't just doing like, oh, we're supporting the community. No, they were tackling issues. They were saying, these are things that are hurting our people. Let's attack those things directly, right? So let's think about what are the systemic issues facing the LGBTQ+ community today, right? We can look at health. It takes like 3+ years to get an appointment at a gender identity clinic, right? That's deeply harmful for trans people. But let's like take a pause and be like, actually gender identity clinics are deeply harmful, and that whole system just needs to like burn down and start again, right? Like it's all broken, right? So like healthcare for trans people in this country is atrocious, right? 1 in 4 LGBTQ+ people have experienced discrimination from healthcare staff in the NHS, right? I love the NHS, I'm all for it. We got some upgrades that need happening, folks, okay? Mental health. 52% of LGBTQ+ people have experienced depression, 31% of LGBT people, and 46% of trans people have considered suicide. The mental health of the LGBTQ+ community plummeted during the pandemic. This is a really serious area for concern. Violence. This is the one that Manchester Pride is currently tackling and looking at. In the past 10 years, anti-LGBTQ plus hate crimes have risen by 324% for sexual orientation and 789% by gender identity. 64% of LGBTQ plus people have experienced a hate crime. I know I have. I know lots of other people in this room have, right? It can be as small as being called a slur or being as big as being very violently attacked, right? Housing. A quarter of trans people have experienced homelessness. A quarter of young people experiencing homelessness are LGBTQ+, the majority citing familial rejection as a reason for that. 59% of those young people have faced discrimination while accessing housing support services. These are just 4 systemic issues, just 4, but they're all really serious issues. And while we're all standing around here being like, oh, how do we support the LGBTQ community? Lovely. Here you go. We have some issues to face. Like, yes, we want to support the community, but we also want to tackle these issues, right? Let's get specific, right? So that's what I'm going to encourage you all to do right now. So in your tote bags, you should have an index card. If you don't, let me know. I have extras. But you should have one, and you should also have a pen. Try and find it, and then I want you to write down one of these 4 on your index card. Or if you feel like I missed a big one, that you're like kind of mad that I missed it, write that one down instead. That's fine. And I recognize that these are very broad categories. If you don't have an index card, you should have a notebook. You can use that instead, right? But write in big, nice letters, mental health, violence, whatever it is that you're personally wanting to tackle. What do you want to fight? We can't fight all of it. Not today. So pick one, just one. I'll give you another couple minutes. How am I doing for time? Oh, fine. All right. This is what we're going to do, folks. Let me get through my instructions before you get up, but we are going to move around now, so get ready, okay? I want you to try and find other people who wrote something similar to you, okay? So maybe for health, we'll go into that back corner. For mental health, it's that back corner. For violence, it's this corner. And for housing, it's this corner. And if it's none of the 4, maybe meet in the center somewhere, okay? I want you to find people who wrote something similar to you. I want you to share with those people why you picked that topic. Why is it important to you? Maybe, you we're saying violence, but you're like, actually, I'm very specifically domestic violence. I'm not so much hate crime, right? Like, maybe you've got something you really want to talk about, right? Share your skills and talents. What could you bring to the table in addressing that issue? Maybe you work in marketing, and you're like, I can do a whole Twitter campaign around this. I'm going to create a hashtag. Maybe you work in finance, and you're going to apply for some grants, and you're going to think about budgeting a project for this, whatever it might be. We all have something to bring to the table, right? It might be a really obvious skill. It might be a less obvious skill. You might just really like knitting. Cute. Maybe you're going to knit some hats that have a slogan on them, right? Think about what your skills are. We all have skills, okay? And then, using that particular skill set, how can you all collaborate? What's a project that you could all do to work together to address that systemic issue? And then maybe, what are you hoping to achieve? What's the goal, okay? I'm going to give you a maximum of 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. We don't have a lot of time, all right? So, go! Oh, sorry, folks. If you want to write things down, we've got flip chart paper and Sharpies at the front of the room if you would find that helpful. Oh, thank you. Something random right in the middle of the room. Yeah. I've got a drink. Can you do me the hugest favor? Can you just pass around a sheet of flip chart paper and some pens to people, if you get a chance? I can get a colleague to do it. Yeah? Just one sheet and some pens. Thank you. It's hot under these lights. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. If I can have my mic back on at in 1 minute.
There's no like responses.
It is plural, so yeah, fraud is definitely right to the sun. It's transitioning, you went to GP, people that were working for an old like fraud was shoot it's not just face. And it's currently got 4 year just the first appointment.
Yeah, how old is that?
18.
You got the animal.
Yeah.
Okay, so at least that's if your son was 17 or 16, they'd be on that wait list, they'd get to the end of it, and then they'd be shifted over to the next one. Yeah. So Sean Faye's gonna be speaking later.
Yeah.
You gotta buy her a book.
Oh, I've got that. Yeah, I've read it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just come out here.
Yes, it is.
June. I mean, I'm gonna get
I'm gonna get us started, sorry. All right, folks, I'm really sorry to interrupt what I'm sure are really positive conversations, but we're really short for time today. I'd have given you all day if I could have had it, but I'm going to have to ask if we can please return to our seats now. But if you need, really quickly, catch those contact details from the people you're talking to. Maybe you've got a chance to reconnect at another time, and don't forget that we're networking at the end of today, so maybe you can continue these conversations later on. Yes, thank you. The trick is leaving enough time for questions. All right, folks, if we can please get back to our seats, I do need to move forward. Sorry, we are short on time. I do apologize. The interactive part of the workshop is my favorite part, and I don't want it to be cut short. I hope that was a positive first step. I think maybe there's a bit of pain that I feel in that it's only a first step. And I want to continue having those conversations for the rest of today and I want to be writing all over that flip chart paper and making plans and coming up with a campaign or a project or creating a brand new initiative or charity or something and moving forward. But what you've just started doing is something called coalition building. It is the collaborative work of different groups with shared interests working together. And you don't just have to coalition build with LGBTQ plus people. You could coalition build with an organization that's dedicated to, for example, fighting knife crime. If you're working in the violence area, if that was your topic, you might want to partner up with your local council, for example. They might not necessarily be an LGBTQ plus group, but they'll be fighting the same issue as you, and you can work together towards supporting LGBTQ plus people who are victims of knife crime, for example. So do be thinking about coalition building, because whether it's from the conversations you have today or it's the work that you do leaving here today, I posit to you that when we begin doing real social organizing as part of our EDI work, we will also start doing that sort of cultural change. We'll be changing minds, right? When the Black Panthers created the Rainbow Coalition in the 60s, they worked with people who identified as white nationalists, who identified as Nazis, because they were fighting for things like housing, and they were fighting issues that were based in class, and both groups had the same struggles. And without making demands on those nationalists, a lot of the white people working with the Black Panthers eventually took down their Nazi flags and eventually came to that conclusion themselves just by working in partnership. So let's social organize. Let's work together. Let's work collaboratively to address systemic issues. And then hopefully the bureaucratic work, your EDI managers, won't be working within a silo within their own organization, but actually their work will be informed by the larger community work that they'll be doing. The everyday interactions work won't just be the odd unconscious bias training. It'll be actual conversations with marginalized community members that will change perceptions and change the way we interact with one another. And this will justify resistance work. We can achieve tackling all four, right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to want me to say, down with capitalism, we have to get rid of it, the whole system is broken. It is, it's broken, we're all going to die. But I can't fix that one for you. I would love to. I'd love to be able to say, and this is the step-by-step process for destroying our current system of oppression. I can't get you there because the process is slow and it's hard and it's going to take a lot of work. But we can do it together. So hopefully you're feeling really inspired right now, but you also might be feeling a little bit nervous. You might be feeling like, I don't know how to do this. This is too much for me. This is a lot. If you don't feel confident in your abilities to get this work done, you can join something called the All Equals Charter. So I'm going to be real quick here. This is the work that I do. This is what I do at Manchester Pride. A lot of people are very, very suspicious and very critical of Pride organizations working with corporates. At Manchester Pride, we take that concern very seriously. So I was hired in to ensure that the corporate partners that we have, the relationships that we have with businesses is authentic, that they uphold intersectional inclusion, and that we have a standards by which we measure that. So you're welcome to join that membership program. If you'd like more information, you can find it on our website at allequalscharter.com, and you can become part of a community of businesses and organizations working towards intersectional inclusion. If you have any questions or concerns about that, come grab me or Becky, who will be sitting at the expo stall for the All Equals Charter downstairs, or check it out on our website. Or if you don't want to join us and you just want to do it yourself, you can turn to your action plan at the back of your workbook. You can find that in your tote bags right now. In your tote bags right now. You should have a workbook from today. And if you turn to the very last page, you'll find an action plan that will allow you to in this workshop. So you'll find on the first page 4 sections. Experiencing inclusion, right? We talked about this, right? This is about those everyday interactions. What work can you do to support the everyday experiences of LGBTQ plus individuals? Think about any practical learning that you got from the panels you've been to today. Is there anything you can draw that supports LGBTQ plus individuals from those panels that you can put in this section of your action plan? The second section, justifying resistance, that's supporting the whole community. Again, anything that you've learned from the panels, from this workshop, from your own ideas that you can put in that section. The third one, supporting an inclusive workplace environment or culture. If you're not currently employed, don't stress. What can you do to support a cultural change in the wider world, in the wider UK, if not in your own place of employment? Maybe it's just in Manchester, whatever you can do. What have you learned from the panels today that you can put in that section? And then lastly, social organizing. That's that collaborative work. Who have you met today? What networks have you built today? Tolu talked beautifully about connection today. Great, who have you connected with? How can you partner with them? How can you continue to maintain that connection so that the next time you speak to them, it's not at the 2023 Manchester Pride Conference, it's next week in a booked Zoom meeting that could have been an email, right? Like, how can you make sure that that happens? To support you with that, you've got the next page, right? This is making sure that that motivation or inspiration you might be feeling right now carries on when you leave today. So think about your intended outcomes. Be specific. Vague outcomes do not result in concrete results, right? Like, I often get people who say things like, I'm going to make the LGBT community more visible. And I'm like, cute. How? And they don't know. They're going to hang a flag maybe once. It's not good enough, right? Think about specific concrete actions that you're going to be able to actually implement, right? From there, who's going to be responsible for that action? It's okay if it's not you. You might say, our organization needs to do a social media campaign, whatever. That's our action. However, I don't work in the marketing team, so it's not going to be me. I need to book a meeting with Stephen, Patricia, whatever their name is, right? And like get that booked in, right? It's okay to say, I'm going to talk to so-and-so about this. I'm going to talk to my manager about this, whatever it might be. And then ask yourself, what can you bring to the table? What can't you? That's fine. And then finally, deadlines. Don't let this moment slip away from you, folks. Give yourself a deadline. Be like, I'm going to book a meeting with so-and-so, and I'm going to do it by X date. And it's going to get done. It's going to go in my diary. I'm going to do it, right? Because then if you put in your diary today, maybe you pull out your phone right now, send yourself an email, stick it in your diary, then when you go home tonight, and then tomorrow, maybe you'll forget about this, or the inspiration will wear off. And if you don't have deadlines, this will just, what was the point again, right? So think about deadlines. And then hopefully this action plan will be a practical tool for you moving forward from the Manchester Pride Conference. That's me finished. Thank you so much, everyone. If there's any questions, I'll take your time now. Thank you.
Do we have time for questions? One or two. Everyone, will you please give a big hand before we have questions for one of the most inspirational. You can clap now while I'm talking, it's fine. And I'll talk, oh, it's fine. Everyone needs a Dr. Christopher Owen in their life. Honestly. Any questions?
One, two. Hey. Hi again. You spoke beautifully. Also, I really enjoyed what you said. Something that I didn't reference before that I've now got a chance to is around how we talk to each other is really important. But how important do you feel it is for straight people to be in rooms like this? And how come it's only ever queer people that have to sort this stuff out? And what does that look like when it's not that safe, or it doesn't feel that safe for us to, be really affecting change in cis street, or whatever we want to call it, cis het street. So how do we get more straight people into rooms like this and to who can really make the change?
Thank you so much. So I think there's a variety of options there. And one of them, you talked about how race isn't real, right? So how do we get white people in those spaces? By making it their responsibility, by making them recognize that they have a race too, right? LGBTQ plus also isn't real. It's all made up, guys. So, right, like, gender's not real. Sexual orientation is like, we've all got one. Like, I think once we make support our cishet allies and people that we know in this world with knowing that, like, actually this affects them too, right? So I often talk to cishet men who do have their walls up, and I talk about how, like, toxic masculinity is killing them, and there's loads of stats that show that it's killing them. And maybe if they took a second to consider the ways that queerness liberates them, that maybe they'll want to come to the table. And so I think part of it is that cultural shift. It's about having those conversations with those individuals, right? We talk a lot about calling out. I'm a big fan of calling in. Like, sit down with the people in your life, the people that you have that relationship with, and call them in. Have those difficult conversations. Be gentle as best you can. Don't yell at them as best as you can, even though I know that you really want to. I know I really want to, right? The people you don't know, you don't owe that emotional labor to, so that's fine. Leave them alone, right? On a larger scale, I think, again, it's coalition building. So for example, I talked earlier about knife crime and partnering with, say, your local city council to support LGBTQ plus people who are facing hate crimes, right? So you're gonna get loads of straight people in the room then, right? And then when they're in the room and we're all talking about violence, be authentic and true and real. Don't assimilate to them. Make them assimilate to you, Jesus, right? And I think when they know that they're safe in that space and they have something to contribute to that space and that they're working in partnership with you, we'll break those boundaries of us and them. Is that a good answer? Is that fine? Yeah? Okay, great.
Yeah, one more question. Chap down here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I noticed earlier on in the presentation you were critical, shall we say, of EDI and bureaucratic management, but then towards the end you seemed to swing towards it. I think there is a very strong case for equality and diversity in any organisation, and in cooperation with collaboration with management. I mean, to give a personal example, I'm a Samaritan, and our EDI rep, it's our local branch, and on the national EDI with the Samaritans, of course, as well. And we're working towards, in conjunction with our director, making sure that it is inclusive for all.
Thank you so much. I'm going to really quickly clarify my point then for you, because I don't think I was clear. It's right here. Keep it. Okay? Keep your EDI managers, keep EDI in your businesses and organizations. Just amp it up a bit. Get it focused, right? It's not about just like assimilating marginalized communities into the organization. It's about changing the organization. I 100% agree with you. We need our EDI managers. We need to better fund our EDI managers. We need to better train our EDI managers. We need to better support them with external resources, 100%. I'm saying it's not good enough. I'm not saying get rid of it. Is that clear? Thank you.
Dr. Christopher Owen, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Wow. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a short break. We've only got Sharpies there. Can we get some, do we need the Sharpies back? We need the Sharpies back. Yeah, if you've got a Sharpie, could you please just drop it down here? No pilfering of the Sharpies. Okay, yeah, damn. I do have a mug in one of my cupboards at home with different coloured Sharpies in, and I'm very protective of them. I'm like, anyway, right. Okay, we're going to take a short break. Then at 3:40, so not long, please make your way to your preferred next panel session. For the next session in this room, we have Protecting Trans Youth. Going to be joined by the amazing Charlie Craggs, Kate O'Donnell, King McDowell, Alfie Austin, and the panel's going to take place here in the Compass Room. Rebecca Soare and the Nihilists will be facilitating the panel Working Class and Queer. That will take place downstairs in Pier 8. And if you are heading, this is really important actually, if you are heading downstairs for that session, please head back up here for 4:30 because we're going to be joined by our special guest, the incredible Faye. Thank you very much and enjoy your break. everyone. There you are. Fantastic. Right, okay, a few more sessions to go before the end of today of what has been an incredible Manchester Pride conference. Have you all enjoyed it today? I said, have you all enjoyed it today? For this next session, chaired by the incredible Kate O'Donnell, it's Protecting Trans Youth.
That's me, I'm on. Hi, everybody. Hello, we're really aware, we just had a little chat before, we're really aware that it's kind of getting near the end of the day, so we decided to be quite lively, even though this is about protecting trans youth, which on paper might look a bit like, oh God, that's going to be really hard and really depressing, and in a way, if we'd called it nurturing trans youth or supporting, it would have been different. But I think we have to have that as a starting point to recognise that, like a lot of trans people, we need allies and we need looking after and we need protection, and we are vulnerable by the nature of being trans due to transphobia, and it's really important that we start there. So my name is Kate O'Donnell. I have got blue hair. I am 57, but you wouldn't know. I'm wearing a William Morris blouse, some flared jeans and nude-coloured boots, I imagine you'd call those. And I'm really happy to be here. This is really special to my heart. When I first met young trans people, some trans children, it really felt like a little gap in my heart that I didn't know. They felt like I hadn't accessed young trans people. I transitioned 20 years ago. I was already in my late 30s. And in the words of Whitney Houston, I believe that trans youth are the future. Treat them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside and give them a sense of pride. Thank you, Whitney. So, without further ado, I'm just going to whisk down, and we are a very large panel, and we know that they go quite quick. So, first of all, we're going to start with Charlie.
Let the children's Hi guys, I'm Charlie. I have to describe what I look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will.
Yeah. Oh, I'm aware that I'm wearing quite an what's the word? Inappropriate top. I didn't realise how appropriate it was, and I don't have anything with me because I'm not from here, I'm from London. So yeah, I'm wearing a blazer, a little cute top, jeans. I'm single. I am a trans activist and author, and I do like media stuff now. I've got like interestingly for the panel, well, I guess that's why I'm here. It's about trans youth. It's called Transitioning Teens on BBC Three, and I do like influencer stuff. Yeah.
Brilliant. Welcome.
Hello, I am Josie Brown. I'm 18 years old from Rotherham. I'm wearing a jumper with the colours of the trans flag on, if you hadn't already noticed. Skirt and tights. And I am a trans young person. I transitioned in July of 2019, but I've known that I've been trans since June 2015. And I'm here on this panel because I want to inspire other young people and to be an activist for people like myself.
Hi there, I'm Katie. My pronouns are they, them. I'm non-binary. I'm a junior doctor training in paediatrics. I'm also trans and queer and non-binary. I'm also a trustee for Mermaids, and yeah, I'm very excited to be part of the panel today.
Do you want to just describe?
Oh my gosh, I forgot, totally forgot. Sorry, ADHD brain. So I am, I've got an undercut with slick back hair. I'm wearing a kind of floral shirt, I suppose. Blue trousers and rather fabulous new shoes, which are leather brogues. Thank you.
Great.
Hi, I'm Faye, or some of you might know me as Husk. I perform like synth pop music, so you might know me as that. Either is fine. You can call me either. I'll answer pretty much anything. It's fine. My pronouns are they, them, but I was speaking to Kate earlier about how kind of I have like formal pronouns, which are they, them, but then I have kind of like an informal setting, so kind of like, you know, if we're friends or if, you know, I'm kind of performing or something like that, I'm a little bit more fluid with it. I feel like language is not kind of complete in the way that we talk about gender, and I'm kind of happy to explore that. I am white. I'm wearing a hat. I've got some lovely aviator glasses on, and I've got a little bit of stubble, which I'm quite proud of.
Oh, is it me? Hi, I'm Jay. I am mixed heritage. I'm
half Jamaican and half British. I'm wearing a green and white striped top and black jeans and camouflage trainers because I'm trendy at Wendy. What else do you want to know? That's it.
Pronouns?
My pronouns are him, they. I, like Alfie, I feel like I am every pronoun underneath the sun. Some of you might recognise me if I had a ponytail. I usually wear a ponytail and roller skates and I skate around backwards and scream. That's usually me. So this is like a different side of me today, but yeah.
Welcome to a brilliant panel. And for me, like, I went to an all-boys school as a kid, and so that was like 50 years ago, but I felt like I could have done with some protection then. And I know that trans youth still need protection now. So that's going to be our starting point, is what does, when we say, like, protect trans kids or protect trans youth, what does that mean to you? Where does that land to you, just kind of hearing that and feeling that? And if you just pop your hand up if you've got something to say, that would be great. Alfie?
Yeah, I think it's quite sad that we have to talk about protecting trans youth. I mean, they're children, and we live in a world where, I mean, not just the children, obviously adults as well, but children are innocent and they're demonised simply for being who they are. So it is quite interesting that that's kind of where we're at with it. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like, we're having to talk about protect trans youth, but they're children, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like if the panel was, you know, how can we protect children? People would kind of feel like, oh, I know what to do. But the minute you put trans in front, people go, oh, I don't know what to do.
It becomes like politicised.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a pick a side sort of thing where you shouldn't have to pick a side. It's like it's a child. Like I did a bit of writing and I wrote a piece for Glamour recently because I was asked to talk about like how I felt as a trans person around Adele at the Brits, saying that she was liked being called a woman, and about the gender neutral category. And like, I don't know a single trans person who had a problem with that, but it was made into like a news piece, and it was on like all the big kind of newspapers. Oh, trans people cancel Adele for saying that she's proud to be a woman. And I've written the piece like, actually, like the day that happened, I was in bed grieving all day, trigger warning, because a young person, I know a friend of mine who was a young trans person, killed themselves. And I'm like, trans kids have a lot bigger problems, like, than if Adele is proud to call herself a woman, trans people, period, do. And it's like, it's so sad that it's like, these are children, these are people's lives, but specifically when we're talking about trans kids, they're children's lives. And it's become this political debate of like, whether we're protecting them from the kind of like medical institution of like, oh, should they be allowed to like access hormones and stuff, or whether it's like the way they're being dragged all the time in the media. It's just like, it's their children.
It's been relentless, I think.
I
mean, I transitioned 20 years ago, and there wasn't so much heat on trans people then.
Yeah.
You know, there's this quote, I think it's from Gandhi. It says, first of all, they will ignore you, then they will laugh at you, then they will fight you, then you will win. And I love that quote. And I definitely feel like I was in the ignored stage. Then I quickly moved to the laughed at in media and in films and television. We were the joke. And I definitely feel like the fight's on at the minute. So, yeah.
I'd just like to unpick the issue of vulnerability a bit, because I don't think trans children, young people are inherently vulnerable, and I think you alluded to this in your introduction. It's society, it's the stigma and discrimination of society that creates kind of vulnerability and, you know, exacerbates mental health issues and things like that. So I never want to call trans young people vulnerable in that sense, because that society has done that to them. And I think it's also very much tied to this issue of kind of depathologization, which I'm sorry I even struggled saying the word, but it's like, you know, it's this idea that being trans is a pathology, it's a problem. And unfortunately, and I say this as a doctor, you know, we are trained as doctors to say this is a pathology and this isn't, and we still have not got where we need to get with saying that trans is not a pathology. It's diversity should be embraced. You know, being trans is not a pathology, and that applies to, you know, neurodiversity as well. So I think I like to always kind of unpick these issues and think about them, because it's society, and I think this is what others are saying. It's society that is doing this to young people.
Definitely. What about from our trans youth?
Well, I think the important thing in protecting trans young people is ensuring that they have the freedom of expression to be themselves, the freedom to be who they really are, and also like ensuring that they have like the ready access to gender affirming care, so that they can access hormone blockers and hormone replacement therapy, and if they so wish, sex reassignment surgery, so that that their body won't be distant from who they actually are. I think is the important thing. And another thing I think I should mention is there's a responsibility of schools and teachers to be like trained to support them, because oftentimes trans people aren't supported by their parents or their families. So when there's that lack of support there, it's the schools that need to step up, but oftentimes the schools aren't supportive. So I think along with freedom and the healthcare, there's that need for education as well.
Brilliantly put. And just to say, Josie didn't mention that you've been in the Young Parliament, haven't you? You've been a member of Young Parliament for 2 years. So yeah. We've got an amazing panel here.
I think we just need to show up for them. We need to tell them that they are seen, they are heard, they are loved. I embrace that phrasing. I embrace that ethos. Those of you that know me, that are in the room, or that know me at home, they have seen a change in me over the past 2 years, and that's because I've been on my transitional journey. And those three things, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, those are the three things that I kept telling myself that I am worthy of, that I am able to feel those things from other people. I'm able to feel those things about myself, and that's the lesson that we need to teach the trans youth, and that's what we need to carry forward and show them, that it's okay, that we are loved, we are one, we are a community, we are a family, we are a chosen family. And Kate doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say this right now, but you single-handedly changed my brain by showing me that ethos and giving me that path and making me feel like I was able to do that. And I'm very grateful and very honoured to be sat on this panel and talking about this today. But I would say that's what I would like to add.
Thank you. I think it's really interesting maybe to move on a little bit to the we've all had this experience around Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and there's definitely been, like, they call it the tipping point, and I'm sure if you're a woman or a person of colour, you're probably like, not enough, and I agree. But I feel like the trans movement still feels a bit behind that awareness of that still. I don't feel like we've had our collective movement. I feel like our family members are dying, being neglected, not being able to get housing. I always say, you know, if it was a couple of names in the street, it would be right, okay, you know what I mean? We probably all had experience of that. But we're denied families, we're denied relationships, we're denied healthcare, housing, jobs. It's massive. It's really massive, and it's systemic. I feel transphobia is as systemic as racism and misogyny. You know, that's kind of what I believe. And but I always look to those. Like, I went to the Tackling Racism panel deliberately because I really look to people of colour, like, what have they done? What can we do? How can we learn? And then I went to the neurodiverse panel as well, and the disabled panel. And what I heard in both of them was people didn't want to speak up because they didn't want to be on the spot, they didn't want to be more vulnerable, they didn't want to have to be the one kicking off and making trouble. And I feel like maybe some of this protecting trans youth or all trans people is empowering trans people to be able to say, I need protection. So when they're in their families, schools, healthcare, they think, I need protection. I don't think I've heard trans youth say that. And that's what struck me. But what you know, what's happened over the last couple of years, this collective experience we've had, like, how can we get those allies who are a bit more woke, or, you know, to use that phrase, how can we get that? I know you do a lot of work getting allyship and supporting, so like, how have we done that, and how can we build our army of supporters so when trans youth feel like they need some protection, like, we got your back, like, how are we going to build that, how are we going to push through that transphobia, or that, how are we going to do that?
I've got an answer.
Great.
Because especially with this being like about pride, when I've been writing pieces lately about this, I've always kind of bring it back to the fact that if we look at like what's happening real time right now in like Hungary, for example, they, for the last like as long as the like kind of wave of recent kind of, especially like TERF type transphobia in the media's been happening here, there's been that happening in Hungary, and much wilder. And as a result of like the transphobia, which like the people have watched, including LGBT people, and just like kind of it's been allowed to happen in the media, kind of in the streets, in the kind of like in the high courts, whatever you want to call it, kind of legislatively. Because it was allowed to happen, now they're like, as well as repealing trans rights, they've come on to repealing gay rights. Yeah. And I keep saying in my pieces, they're coming for you next. Don't be like, you can sit back and watch them take away our rights, but I promise you, if you don't speak up for us, they're coming for the gays next. They're trying to, I think they have actually repealed like gay adoption in Hungary now. There's other like, I think even maybe like pushing for, I don't know if there's gay marriage, but they're pushing for kind of things that have been afforded to us. They can take back, and they will take back. If they see they can make like leeway on that with like the trans community, they pull we're a chain as a community, LGBTQ, whatever. If they pull one link off, the chain gets like weaker, and then they're just going to keep pulling chains off. And when they see that they can pull chains off because we're not standing up for each other, that it's going to happen. It will happen here. It will happen here. So it's just...
I love that. That's brilliant. I think it's like transphobia. They're coming for you next.
They're coming for you next.
Do you know what I mean? I always say that, like with the LGBT, I always say take another letter and become a champion of that letter. So whichever letter you're on, become a champion for another letter in the LGBT.
Because if you think about it, a lot of the arguments they'll use for like transphobia, they can apply to you. Totally. If they're saying, oh, trans women shouldn't be allowed in women's bathrooms because we're a threat to women. First of all, I'm not even into women. Second of all, why are lesbians allowed in women's bathrooms then? Why are gay men allowed in men's bathrooms? Like, what is the logic? Like, they're coming, if they can, and there's literally like consultations in government right now of whether trans women should be allowed to use women's toilets. Yeah. They will be coming for you next. I kid you not, a lot of the like prolific transphobes are like notorious for like doing stuff. I can't remember her name, Baroness Nicholson or something. She's really notorious. She's really homophobic as well. She got ASDA to like ban LGBT, like gay books. They are coming for you next. Like, I kid you not. So
they don't tend to be one. You will very rarely meet somebody who is just transphobic or just racist or misogynist. It's very rare, you know. What about any other thoughts on how we're going to tackle the systemic?
Well, I kind of just wanted to add on to that a little bit, because as somebody who was like AFAB and who's also autistic and trans, obviously I am white, but speaking to my friends who are of colour, they have similar experiences, that all the kind of phobia that we experience, or the kind of discrimination that we experience, it's all the same. It's all the same. You know, like, trigger warning again. Like, I was sexually assaulted when I was presenting as female, and also now as a trans masc person, how people interpret, you know, whatever. And it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. But like you're saying, it's not just LGBT. They will come for everybody. It's you know, everybody that is part of a marginalised group. We have to kind of recognise that. We kind of go against the white cis-het patriarchy, and we need to kind of make sure that together we're kind of pulling that all together, and we are resisting that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think maybe, because I think you can when thinking about this issue, it's very easy to feel a bit depressed when you look at the kind of stories and, you know... No, sorry. I mean, it is, but then I think, like, so what can we do that is a positive thing? Yeah. So, like, you know, as I said, I'm a junior doctor, so I'm a very, like, openly queer, non-binary junior doctor. They didn't want to put my pronouns on my name badge, but I made them. I was like, well, I'll put it in my name then, so then you can't. And, you know, I don't work, you know, specifically with trans young people, but obviously some of the young people I work with happen to be trans. And I just, you know, so I think it's about role models. So like I try and do that so that, you know, maybe some of those young people or young people that haven't come out as trans, they see that, you know, you can be a trans person and you can be successful, you can be happy, you can achieve things. And, you know, that's really important. And I think on that as well, you know, I think trans like visibility, it is very white. And so I think it's also about like enabling trans people of colour as well and disabled trans people and making, you know, showing the diversity of because that's the thing, LGBTQ, we are, you know, we are diverse and we need to show that, and we need to show trans young people that, you know, there is somebody that they can aspire to be, you know, in the future.
There's also something about the figures. I was watching your programme last night.
Transitioning Teens available on BBC iPlayer right now.
Hashtag. Yeah. And it's great. And some of the stats, and I've known about this, is that over the last 5 years at Tavistock, the referrals of young trans people have gone up 300%. Yeah. So we're not going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And I think as a society, we actually haven't experienced this level of out trans youth ever. No. And the bomb, I always feel like the bomb gets dropped in usually quite cisgendered heteronormative families, and suddenly there is this trans bomb that gets dropped, you know, or this queer bomb. I've met those parents, they're literally like this. They're at Trans Pride and they're like that, and I'm like, just go for it. Do you know what I mean? The kids just want stickers. It's going to be fine. You know, but you can tell the fear in their eyes. And I think that having role models, having ways to chip away, being more people who can safely be out, you know, that's important, because as a young, to see, I mean, I always say, if I had conferences, some of the festivals I'm involved in, the work I see now, that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, if I'd have seen that younger, my transition, I'd have felt more protected in a cultural way. You know, even if I'm not on the street, I would like if I could turn the telly on and see me, because I believe if you can't see yourself, you can't be yourself. And you know, when was the last time you saw a young trans person on telly? You know, is it any wonder they're vulnerable? Because they're almost invisible and powerless.
And that enables the kind of misinformation to be spread, because people are like, that's all I know, that must be the truth, you know.
I'm kind of going to move on to the next question, because it's kind of around that, the difference and the types of cisnormality and transphobia and oppression that a trans youth would experience compared to a trans adult. I just wondered if anybody had any thoughts about that difference. Yeah, Josie.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that separates transgender young people from trans adults is it's often gatekeeping. And it's often people saying, like, you're too young to be trans, or you're too young to understand what LGBT means. And it generally comes from cis-het people, but it can at times come from gatekeeping within the trans community itself. It's rare, but it does exist. So I think that's one of the main things to be aware of about, you know, saying that some really young trans people are too young, when I don't think anyone is too young to be trans, because more often than not, they don't detransition, they don't, you know, they do continue to be themselves for the rest of their life.
Yeah. There was on the programme that I was watching yesterday, they were saying, a doctor was saying, out of 99 trans, say if they kind of gave hormones or hormone blockers to young trans people, out of 99, one might detransition. So does that mean the 99? Yeah. That's the argument that's being used, you know, like for that one person who might be affected, we're going to not treat or support 99 young trans people, and I think that's quite shocking.
This kind of stuff makes me so angry, because it's just such barefaced inequality that you're saying that one person, and I don't believe it's 1 in 99 at all. I think it's much less than that. You know, that one person, their rights are above the 99 trans people that are being, you know, denied access to healthcare. It's absolutely like, and the irony is that, you know, there's a big review going on at the moment of health services for trans young people, and it's so steeped in cis heteronormativity, but they don't
see that at all. They're unable to see that problem. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that all these systems of oppression are, you know, very much rooted in cis-normativity. And how do you challenge that? It's so difficult. And, you know, it's absolutely worse for young people because, oh, no, you couldn't possibly know. And Bell v. Tavistock is like the perfect example of that. Essentially, the court said, before it was overturned, that people who are under 16 cannot possibly, you know, consent to puberty blockers. Oh, and actually, because if they have puberty blockers, they're going to have to cross hormones. So actually, yeah, they can't do that either. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers.
And I don't think it's beyond the realms of people to imagine. You know, like people are like, oh, trans, it's over there on the trans island, where we can never get to. And like, oh dear, you're going on the ship to the trans island. Good luck, waving you off.
Trans island would be better than Turf Island.
But it's so ridiculous. Yeah, but it's so ridiculous because we could all imagine what it's like to be trans and having to go into school tomorrow. Just think of run your school, run your time at school, and just run that being trans. I think that's not a great leap. And I don't think we do that enough. I mean, Jay, I was interested, you know, like you saying about kind of when you came to decide this, you know, it's quite recent. Do you feel like if there was stuff going on when you were younger, or why now? You know, is this difference between thinking about trans youth and trans adults? Like, because people are transitioning up to 90, you know, we've got this massive, you know, spectrum of when people transition.
I think for me it was more so I didn't see anybody like how I felt or how I viewed myself when I was younger. And my mum always used to say to me that if I can't see the change, be the change that I want to see. And and that's something that always resonates with me. In every decision that I've ever made, I've always had that in the back of my brain. So I wanted to save myself from my self-guilt and my self-doubt and my self-deprecating, the red button I always press in my head, that inner explosion that we've all been there, we've all experienced it. Sometimes, some are more like extreme than others, but I needed to stop that process. And I'm a dancer, I'm a singer, I'm a creative, I'm a facilitator, I vogue, I roller skate, I'm part of the ballroom scene. There are a lot of people that I started to listen to the people around me by them saying that I'm an inspiration to them because I'm so strong and I am confident and I have this opinion and this ethos that they want to be a part of or they've taken with them. And I started to feel really bad because I felt like I wasn't being true to people, and I started to withdraw from society, started to withdraw from my friends, and it was that change that made me be confident again. But it made me feel secure, so then I can live my authentic life and inspire more people that way. I have a 15-year-old son, which most people know and most people don't know, and he is openly queer at school, and he said to me not too long ago that the only reason why he feels able to do that is because I've been able to do what I've done. And he's now a dancer, he wants to dance. He can't dance, he's got no rhythm. But God loves to try. I love him to pieces. He is my best friend, I idolise him, and he inspires me to do better. And I see myself in how he is at 15. And I wish that when I was 15, I had someone like me in my life that would enable me to do that.
Kind of doing it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cute. It's kind of
So
like a success
cute.
story.
It's so
There's a
cute.
show there, any producers, let me know.
Come on.
But,
always working, always working.
No, but thinking about it in terms of like today, it's very like a full circle moment for me talking to him and having him in my life and having me in his life. It's just cute, isn't it?
I'm just so glad you're on this panel and coming more out. You know what I mean? I feel really privileged. Well, I know you're saying you felt that with me, but I feel that with you, having you here today. And I made quite a bid for you to be on this panel, so I'm really pleased.
Thank you so much.
So I don't know how we're doing for time. We've got 15 left. Is that including the Q&A? What does that mean? I'm getting confused now. So we've got 10 minutes to carry on chatting, and then we're going to have a look. Yeah, you've got another question. Oh, we've got loads to chat about. Thanks for coming, by the way. I don't know why it's not packed to the rafters, but hey-ho. Meow. I love bums on seats. So, what... You're okay there. So, that's our very hard-working signers. Can we hear it for them, please? Access. I mean, today when we were talking about access is vital, and this is just part of it. So I think that's something I'm really going to take away from today. So thank you for the work you do. So moving on to, and we probably touched on this, but I just want to ask, what are the practical steps that everyone at this conference can do to be moving forward to fight for trans liberation, maybe with a focus on trans youth? So some of the issues we've raised, what are some of the solutions if we haven't already explored them?
Can I start?
Yeah.
I'm confident now. She's out. Start having the conversation. The most important thing that we can do is to just start having the conversation. Today, we started having the conversation. Everybody's on the same page. It's getting people to hear what each of us have got to say, to hear what each of you have got to say, and to come onto the same page and to move together and to be as one. It's starting the conversation. That's what I have to say.
Yeah.
Adding to that, I totally agree. The conversation needs to be opened, and we need to keep talking about it as well, because in my personal journey, things have changed about who I am and how I understand that. But first of all, you need to go and find out. You can't just go and be like, a lot of the people, their friends kind of say, oh, I'm trans to them, and they go, Alfie, can you take this person on? And I'm like, I'm happy to kind of share my experience with them, support them any way I can, but they need you. They've come to you. You're their friend. You're their loved one. You need to go and find out and support them.
Right, I've got 3 things. So yeah, just to add to that, I think it's the LGB people that are not the T people. We need you guys to, there'll be different levels of experience of trans issues in the room. We need you guys to advocate for us and like to explain what a non-binary person, to explain what is pronouns. And number 2, buy and read Sean Faye's fabulous book. Because
as if on cue.
That was not even planned. Look at that. The transgender issue. Literally all the doctors I work with, I'm like cis, mostly cis hetero. I'm like, please buy this book and read it. Because like, oh, what can I do? Buy the book, read the book. There we go. And finally, I'd say support trans youth organisations like Mermaids, like Gendered Intelligence. I'm sure there's many others.
Good points.
Right, so I think one of the most important things I've ever learned is if doing nothing is doing harm, you have to do something. So I would say if you have the ability to take action, you should take action. So always call out homophobia or transphobia, biphobia, any form of bigotry. If you see it, don't overlook it, don't tolerate it. You should always report it, denounce it, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and I would add kind of talking about conversation and like getting involved as LGBT people in the conversation. Just like when things are happening in the media, when things are happening in the high courts, we need you to raise your voice as well. We have literally no chance in hell of people like you were saying about why haven't we had our moment? It's because we're such a minuscule community. We're like 1% of the population. Like the women are 0.5% of the population, for example. Of course, they're having their moment because like there's more people affected. Like
that's why.
Duh, Kate. But I mean, like no. But I'm just saying, like we need like people to. We'd have no chance in hell of like having making a dent in this if we don't have you on our sides. And it's about just not just about like the everyday stuff. It's about the big things that we need you to raise. Be like, actually, this isn't okay. And like, especially if we come together, like I was saying about the links and like Hungary and stuff. If even like the thing we're talking about with like. How do people know when they're trans at such a young age? Well, they can apply that same argument to you as LGBT people. Like again, just understand that they'll come for you next. So just like, please, speak up. Like even if it's as simple as on social media. Like as long as like these institutions, whether it's like media, the kind of health, like medical institution, education, whatever, if they can see that we're not letting this fly as a community, they're less inclined to make shit fly.
Thank you. I would just add to that, and something I say a lot, is be excited. Be excited for them. Because sometimes people, when you're trans, you have nowhere to be excited about it. People go, oh dear, oh God, what are we going to do? Oh dear, we have to debate it and like come for you. But do you know what I mean? If you can go, oh wow, amazing. So what are we going to, wow, what do we need to do? That's great. I know somebody else is trans, going to hook you up, do this. You know, be excited, because sometimes you need, you want to have something hopeful and joyous about being trans. Because I feel, and I hope you've experienced it, it is joyous. It's kind of, when you step outside of the trans world, that's where it kind of gets a lot more miserable. You know, so I think be excited for trans people. Why not? Fuck it. So we're going to do Q&A. So do you have any questions for us, please? Oh, we've got one here. Yep. And then there's a few more around there.
Hi, I'm Zed. My pronouns are they, them. I think throughout history of social progression, whether that be gay marriage or what, I think the think of the children argument has always been the false flag of kind of small c conservatism. But that children is always a very abstract and inhuman concept. And actually, in reality, for people who work, you will know young people are alive, they're human, they are sometimes capable of rational thoughts and actually, you know, have their own autonomy. How can we support these people who are being caught in the middle of a seismic cultural war, you know, and they're being weaponized just by existing and by how they identify? And then similarly, how can we engage these young people and include them in the work which we do to support their rights and give them their own autonomy as well?
Yeah. Anybody want to pick up on any of those? Be excited. Yeah. No. Okay, sorry. I just thought I'd try that.
I guess, like, obviously the protect the kids argument is always kind of used, and I think the best way to target, or to tackle that rather, is if people just actually see real trans kids, actually see that they are real people and they are healthy and happy, and you know they're doing great. And if they're not doing great, it's certainly not because they're trans, or it's not because they're trans solely. It'd be the transphobia that kind of comes with that. You need to kind of see that trans people are actually real people.
Yeah, oh gosh, it's a good question, because I really wish there was like a simple way to fix it. You know, I've had abuse on social media, so I'm a pediatric doctor, and I've had abuse saying you shouldn't be working with children. You know, that kind of thing happens. And it's just preying on fears, and it's preying on like these sensationalized stories. And I think, yeah, we've got to combat that with positivity. I do agree with it. So it's having, yeah, like you were saying, having the role models, the positive role models, showing that, you know, trans people are happy. I'm happy most of the time. Yeah, 95% of the time I'm pretty happy. My partner might disagree with me, but...
They're not here, it's
yeah,
fine.
Exactly. But yeah, I think we've got to combat that negativity, because it's negative and it's preying on fear, and we can't stoop to that level. We have to show the positivity, the positive stories. I really think...
And to show the truth.
The truth, exactly.
It's just, we really need to educate because the public are just reading these absolute bollocks. I'm sorry, I don't care if I say it's absolute bullshit, and it's just like, how is it not only like morally allowed, but like legally allowed to like publish the headlines they're publishing? And it's like the public just we need like to be pushing in the media, whether it's in journalism, on TV, like for example, I've never seen a trans, apart from Kira Bell, who interestingly, linking back to your question, like her lawyer is like anti-abortion, and a lot of their cases are like an anti-abortion, and it's like, what that? So you're talking about women's rights and being
EHRC committee as well, by the way.
It's madness. Yes, so it's just like, I think that we have a. I don't know if duty is the right word, because it's so much emotional labour, but like I guess it's a fight, and it's, if the people who feel able to, so I'm someone who does feel I've got the capacity to like kind of do that work in the media to like kind of just expose the truth and show the public you're literally like reading lies, and like even like on a kind of smaller micro level, like even if you're just sharing things on social media that you're like kind of community, like, and I mean like not even LGBT community, just like your friends, family members, people you went to school with, are just like kind of seeing and absorbing kind of almost like through osmosis, like just like your stories on Instagram. If you're posting things like that, and then it kind of ripples make waves. They kind of like it can be as simple as that. But yeah.
And thank you for doing that work, Charlie.
I'm doing nothing.
You
I'm
do.
doing
You are an
hardly anything.
activist, and thank you. So we had another question. There was a few. Quick fire. How long have we got? Oh, well, you can always come and chat to us.
A lot of pressure, you guys.
Make it a good one.
Oh my God. No, don't say that, please. I'm already scared.
40 seconds.
Thank you very much. It's been really insightful. Thank you all. I just had a question for Katie because you're a doctor, and so no pressure again. But I wanted to ask, why are the NHS professionals, especially doctors, not you personally, but I guess the majority, why are they so scared of puberty blockers, and are they scared of kids sort of detransitioning and them having a responsibility or sort of criminal charges against them? Why is that a thing, and how can we raise awareness in the NHS about trans youth? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies on behalf of my profession. No, I know, but it's a really, really important question, and I'm not sure if I do have an answer for you. I think there's different elements to it. I think there's a real fear of doing harm, and I think, unfortunately, as I was saying before, I think a lot of this is rooted in cis normativity. So that's the idea that, you know, oh, it is a bit strange, you know, being trans, it's a pathology. So, like, if we're going to give a treatment for that, we need to be damn sure that, you know, that it's not a harmful treatment. I think, obviously, the media stuff doesn't help. What else? Like, there's so many elements to this issue. I think also, like, the way that we're trained as doctors, we are, as I said before, we're trained to see pathologies. Even something like, you know, ADHD. I tell my colleagues at work I have ADHD, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's a pathology, your brain's a bit... And I'm like, it's not a pathology. I'm smarter than you, mate. Like, seriously, like, I can, you know... But that's how we're trained. We're trained to see things as pathology, and it's pathology, it needs treatment. And I think we've got to move away from that medical model, but I think it's... Where we are, it's very difficult to do that because, you know, even the CAS review that's going on now, it's very much rooted in that kind of pathology and that cis normativity, and I really wish we could fix it. And that's, as I say, I do my small part by just being a trans non-binary doctor, trying anyway. But yeah, it's a very, very good question. Thank you.
That's it, I'm afraid. But thank you to our fabulous panel today. I hope that's inspired you. It's kind of your job now because we're tired. So if you want to just go off and take that on and kind of go and protect trans youth, that would be great. Thank you very much. Let's hear it for the panel.
And for our host.
Oh, Anthony.
Wow. And also, you know, turn it on its head as well. It's a good thing, isn't it? Transition is a good thing. You're finding true happiness.
Yes.
You've been, you know, that's what I did with mine. I remember when I told people I was transitioning, you got this 30-degree head tilt of sympathy.
I know.
Oh.
It's like the party popper should go. They should
exactly.
go. Exactly.
Too right. Thank you to our incredible panel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. Beautiful, 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 beautiful.
Right. You're standing there waiting for the next thing I'm going to do. So we just need to turn this room around, that's all. Thank you very much to our incredible panel. Right. Okay, so we're going to wait for the next group of people to come up, of course, because next something rather special is happening. Sean Faye is about to join us on stage to talk about this incredible book. So I'm not sure if, are we ready to go with this? 3 minutes, we just need to turn this around and we'll be back in a sec. everybody. Hello, all. Hello to everyone who's joined us from downstairs as well. Welcome back. Thanks to our amazing signers as well this afternoon as well, doing incredible work. Okay, last couple of sessions before we wrap up what has been an incredible Manchester Pride here at the Lowry today. We've still got to hear from Stockport Pride and Salford Pride this afternoon, so we'll be hearing from them. But right now, it's a great honour, actually, to welcome our special guest speaker at Manchester Pride. Faye is a writer, one of the UK's leading commentators on trans politics. After training as a solicitor, she left the law to pursue a writing and campaigning career, working in the charity sector with Amnesty International and Stonewall. She was editor-at-large at Dazed, and her writing has been published by The Guardian, The Independent, and Vice, amongst others. Her first book, which I pre-ordered on Amazon, and it turned up day of release, and I devoured it in a few days. It's an incredible body of work. It's just about to come out in paperback as well. It was an instant Sunday Times bestseller. The book I'm talking about is, of course, The Transgender Issue. Speaking for us this afternoon at Manchester Pride, will you please put a big round of applause together for the incredible Faye?
Oh my God. There's a big photo of me that is in front of me, so I was just staring like at myself, vain as ever. Thank you so much. It's a huge honour to be here. I'm really grateful to Manchester Pride for having me, and I didn't realise quite that I was going to be sort of closing external speaker, so that's probably good for pressure. Yeah, my name is Faye. Pronoun she, her. I'm a writer. I recently published a book called The Transgender Issue, An Argument for Justice. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, and hopefully towards the end, I'm going to speak for 10 minutes, and then I think it will be more fun to answer your questions, also less pressure on me, because I don't have to remember everything. Hopefully you'll just ask what you want to know. A little bit about me. I always think it's funny when I'm introduced with the kind of professional bio like that, because it kind of makes me sound great, but also I've really got my shit together. When that's not how I've often felt in my life. I grew up in Bristol, I was one of 3 children. I got a scholarship when I was 11 years old to an all-boys private school. And to be honest, a lot of my youth was this sort of odd mixture of these advantages that I was given that I talk about in my book, that compared to a lot of trans people in this country, because of reasons of class and ethnicity, I was given a lot of advantages that I think a lot of people in the trans community don't have. But combined with that, though, was obviously simultaneously this real difficulty, because I basically had my formative years in a very masculine environment, and was very conspicuously feminine, and didn't really understand why that was a problem. And I also didn't really understand what that meant about my identity. And at that point, so I'm 34 on Sunday, and there was no discussion of trans lives publicly in any positive light. It was the early 2000s. So when I was at school, there was a piece of legislation in place called Section 28, which banned the promotion of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship in schools. And so that kind of meant that all LGBT subjects were kind of shrouded in shame. Actually, my teachers, again, something I discuss in my book, my teachers sometimes were as homophobic as the boys who were bullying me. And certainly, we were only starting to have a conversation potentially about it being a positive thing to be a gay man in the context of my schooling. Certainly nothing about trans lives. But I was told pretty much every day that I was gay. So that's kind of in the end what I decided I must be. And I went away to university, and that was when I began to find myself. I was very gender non-conforming. I did use the term gay. I sort of experimented a lot with femininity. And there came a certain point, I decided to train as a lawyer. And whereas when I'd been a literature student, very artsy, you could turn up in eyeshadow at 2 p.m. to your tutorials and the tutors thought it was fab, there was a point where I was sort of told, you can't do that anymore. You have to be a professional and you're a man. So I tried to repress my femininity then and just be kind of a sort of yeah, like a sort of conventionally presenting, yeah, sort of like as masculine as I could muster, professional, gay man. And I trained as a lawyer. Something that I don't fully regret doing. I regret spending all the money on the training. Like, I took out a massive loan, which like I still get letters about it. Like in 2015, I was like, you're never getting it back. But now I'm getting older, I'm realizing, oh yeah, I've got really terrible credit rating. Maybe I should sort that out. So I trained as a lawyer, and it was like a beneficial, experience professionally. But what was happening in my life then was that I was sort of going out at the weekends more and more, like on the scene. And whereas that had been like a place of self-discovery, it quite quickly became a place of self-destruction for me. And I sank into a huge depression. As I said, it's my 34th birthday on Sunday. On my 26th birthday, I woke up and I thought, why am I still alive? And I was fully prepared to take my own life that day. I really, at that point, thought my life was worth nothing. I didn't care whether I lived or died. I didn't care what happened to me. I just thought, like, there is nothing that I can achieve or do in this world. And that was a really painful place to be in. And I hate that that's like a cliche for trans people. And I was really lucky that day because a friend of mine who is a member of the LGBT community who's a friend from school, sent me an Uber to come and collect me, to take me to his house. And we had like cake and Prosecco together. And it was like literally only that kind of act of someone like actually calling me to see where I was and why I wasn't like, in touch with anyone on my birthday, I think that like has a big part of why I'm still here. And then the months that followed, I made like a sort of range of decisions where I kind of slowly decided that if I was going to continue to live, I would have to make my life worth living. And that's when I came out as trans and began my transition pretty quickly. I'm kind of an all or nothing person. So once I did, I started it pretty quickly once I came out. And yeah, from there, my life started to change. But I think any trans people in the room will know, I always say to people, and I get on Instagram now, and I get messages from people all the time, I'm struggling with my gender. I think sometimes people will just say, do you think I'm trans? It's like, sweet, I don't know you. I mean, I can't tell you that. I mean, you are messaging trans people asking if you are. It's a strong clue. Yeah, people ask me all the time, and what I always say, is that there's a pressure to say that transitioning will fix all your problems. Of course, like what happens, and what a lot of my work is about now, is that you acquire new ones. The difference is that like the ones pre-transition are about like an internal struggle that you keep in secrecy. And then I think what happens when you transition is the struggle becomes between you and society and the conditions in which we live, which are, we don't, society has never really liked allowing people to transition. It's always like about 100 years ago when they realized that gender could not be contained in two categories and there were people that were like crossing the lines of gender. They gave it a name like transvestite, transsexual. They pathologized it and they decided that like they would allow people to cross the lines of gender, but only if we made them like pathologized, mentally ill, and that cis people got to decide. So like there's always been a containment. Society does not fundamentally want people to cross the lines of binary gender. So yeah, so you essentially take on that, I think, when you transition, and that touches all areas of your life, from dating, from work. So quite quickly I realized I don't think I'm going to be a lawyer. I don't think I can do this transition and be like in the kind of like high-flying career. Also, like all my clients I kind of despised, which isn't isn't the best thing for being a lawyer. Like why are you trying to like legally avoid tax? I'm not going to help you. So I began a career as a writer because I thought it would give me the space and time to transition and to work freelance. And I write about lots of things. I write about pop culture. I write about feminism. I wrote about fashion. I wrote about mental health a lot. But what happened in sort of like 2015 onwards, there was obviously a surge in visibility of trans people, which was really great at the time. Like there was really a point where I thought, oh wow, like this is like the moment where we're going to be accepted. Not really realizing that obviously trans people have committed like the worst kind of sin for any minority whose survival is predicated on making themselves invisible, is to become more visible and to suddenly say, well, actually, I'm not going to just transition and move somewhere else with a different name and pretend that I'm not trans to like satisfy society anymore. And that somewhat inevitably has caused a backlash. And around the time of the Gender Recognition Act reform announcement by Theresa May in 2017, that was really ready. It was like a kind of, I don't know, like lighting a match to like a paper doused in petrol, really, in terms of the backlash that we have been seeing ever since. And around that time, I found, like, as someone that had a bit of a platform in the media, unusually for a trans person who hadn't actually been, you know, like in the community or like out as trans for like that long, like a few years, I suddenly felt increasingly more and more pressure to be reactive all the time. So suddenly I wasn't writing about Cher and Mamma Mia anymore. I was having to like read up on endocrinology. I was having to like find out what, like, you know, about law, politics, feminism, endocrinology, this constant exhausting need to like explain why trans people exist fundamentally and why they might need the healthcare they might need or why they need the legal protections they might need. And I was constantly being called upon to essentially provide a counterpoint to people who had much more power and much more privilege in the media than me, editors, senior editors, people who were staff writers when I was like in my mid-20s and a freelancer. And then I started to get sick of it and really burned out with it, because I was like, how many more Guardian comment is free pieces that some people read, but the next day they print something else? Am I going to have to write? It's not cutting through. And I think a lot of trans people have felt that way for a long time, is that these things are designed, I say in the book, I compare it to what Toni Morrison says about racism being a distraction. Fundamentally, it's just supposed to deprive people of color of like their own priorities, their own culture, their own joy, is to keep them explaining again and again their reason for existence. And I think transphobia in the present moment operates in a very similar way, and obviously sometimes overlaps with the way that racism works. And so for me, I decided where the book came into play was that I had looked at what other writers from minorities had done. And I had started to come to the conclusion, which is kind of where I'm leading with this talk, is about the importance of, in politics, if you want to like capture people's imaginations, bring them on a journey with you, write persuasively, that's what my job is you have to tell people like a new story, reacting to the terms of engagement of like the right wing, the Republicans, gender critical feminists, whoever, the Rupert Murdoch media. The minute that you start having to answer them back, you've kind of already lost. The minute that you're having to myth bust all the time, you've kind of already lost. Like, so many political movements show up throughout history. You have to capture people's imaginations and tell them a proactive story and bring them along, not explain why someone else is wrong. And I knew that that was like effective political communication. And then I thought, well, how do I do that as a writer? And I realized that the writers that I'd respected had done that with books, because books gave you like a way to create as a writer. I mean, for other people, it could be your podcast, could be your Instagram page, you know, it doesn't have to be like your main career, but like, I think that's what trans people have been doing so effectively in the last decade, which is what's caused this, is trans people have had much more opportunities to tell proactive stories. And we heard about that in the panel, at the very end of the panel. I caught that, people saying, let's talk about positive things. So that's how I came to write the book. And I was like, I want to create a piece of work that like basically circumvents what most of the public think are trans issues, which actually aren't trans issues. They're like cis issues. That's their problems. Like, what happens if this happens? Or like, you know, I've only heard about this like, all this trans stuff has just taken off in the last decade. It's like, well, that's your perception because of what you've been led into. And I was really frustrated that the media never talked about like the homelessness, poverty, sex work, employment discrimination, violence, that like, actually, you know, as I said at the beginning, I'm a pretty privileged trans person, but like, I had friends who were directly experiencing those things, like good friends. It's not, you know, in the trans community, like, you know, you don't actually it doesn't even have to be the most vulnerable. Like, a huge majority of the trans women I knew had done some kind of sex work, yet no one was ever talking about sex work with regards to trans rights. So I decided that I wanted to make a kind of proactive case. I hope I did that. I do think that hopefully that the sales of the book and its like relative success has been a sign. I think for me, obviously, like I'm pleased as an author, but it's a sign to me about how thirsty people were for some kind of alternative. People desperately were sick of reading the same media consensus, which is like, this is what you should think about this group. Here are all the problems. We're going to keep, if you notice, it's the same stories again and again, regurgitated. And I think people really wanted an antidote to that. And I think that's where the response has come from. So my book, for people who haven't read it or heard about it before, focuses on like the social conditions in which trans people in the UK, and in some cases beyond, lead their lives now. A lot of the focus was on America. We were importing a lot of things. Like a lot of people had heard more, and I think there's a bit more in America because it's just such a much bigger country. There are much more like mainstream trans media figures like Janet Mock or Laverne Cox. I think a lot of people had more of a familiarity with the American context, and one of the things that people would do is be like, well, it's the same as what they do with racism, is to be like, well, yeah, it's really bad in the US, but like here, we've got like the NHS, your healthcare's free, why are you moaning? A lot of people didn't realize, because the media have failed us to realize that, yes, in principle, it is great that like the NHS provides you with your transition-related healthcare for free, except that in reality it doesn't, because of the waiting list, because of the structure, because of the pathologizing way the GIC, the Gender Identity Clinic, works. So I wanted to spell that all out for people and take people through the present experiences pretty much from like cradle to grave, and across class, across ethnicity, across different levels of privilege, about the ways in which, like at home, at school, in nursing homes, in the workplace, trans people find themselves discriminated against largely because of our obsession with binary gender, and also because of like fundamentally structures that would benefit the lives of everyone, you know, in our society if we change them. So like when we're looking at like housing issues, trans young people are more likely to be homeless. Like in London, in the last like 15 years, the amount of like youth LGBT people accessing homelessness services with like the AKT, formerly the Albert Kennedy Trust, it used to be 5% of them were trans. Now they're 35% of them are trans youth, mostly BAME trans youth. And that's like caused because of obviously family rejection, social stigma, in youth when you come out as trans, and that's a side effect because everyone's like, it's great, everyone's coming out younger. Yeah, it is, but community attitudes don't catch up. But like, in order to remedy some of the things that allow young people to fall into homelessness, and homelessness is a systemic issue which it entrenches itself. The younger you're made homeless, the more likely you are to be homeless. It's not a case of just passing the Gender Recognition Act reform. It's not a case of just like being like trans rights are human rights and, you know, as a hashtag, or saying trans women are women. Like, what needs to change there? It's like housing policy. Where's the social housing? Where's the benefits? Where's the universal credit? And a lot of people would say, well, that's not like a trans issue. That's just a social welfare issue. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point, is that actually our points of connection, the things that would improve trans people's lives are the things that would improve like single mothers' lives, would improve like people of color who are immigrants' lives, asylum seekers' lives. These issues are like, yeah, systemic. Like we're one of many groups, and like Charlie was saying on the panel earlier, we are like 0.6% of the population. We don't really stand a chance without forming political coalitions with other groups. And one of the like tactics the media does is to divide and conquer. And for example, with cisgender women who are perhaps disinclined to be supportive of trans rights within feminism, I think often what's preyed upon there is their anxiety about, like, we've seen 10 years of austerity, women's services have been cut. And there's a real fear there about, you know, very real fear of gender-based violence, male violence against women. And there's, what's ironic is that obviously that affects trans women too. Trans women are like really disproportionately victims of male violence. But what's exploited there is a fear of a scarcity. There's only so much to go around. Like women are like, and they mean cis women. Cis women are only now just getting our due. Like we can't have like this group take it away from us. And so what my book tries to present is like more of an abundance mentality, because I'm left wing, is actually we should be looking at like, well, the resources do exist. Look what happened with like COVID with the first lockdown. Like it wasn't great, but like in terms of furlough, in terms of when we took all homeless people off the streets because of the risk of them spreading the virus only in the first lockdown, but like suddenly all the money was found to do that after 10 years of saying there was no money. So if we change about like what we see the problem as, which is hoarding of resources, that becomes then like a different challenge to society, which is less about you need to respect me and my identity, and more about we have the resources to be doing right by everyone, and we're not allocating them properly, and there's someone responsible for that, and it's not trans people. It is obviously an elite at the top of our society, so the book is like directly challenging them. I feel like I've spoken for ages, so I'm gonna allow people to ask questions, but I hope I've like summarized that well enough. Thanks.
Absolutely. As Sean said at the start, going to do some questions now. We've got about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more if we can push it, if we can be really quick with them. But there's obviously a lot to get through here. So has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask this afternoon? There's a hand gone directly up at the back there. We just need the microphone, otherwise people who are watching online. Hello to everyone who's watching online. If you can all hold your hands up and wave at the camera behind, that'd be quite nice. Hi, everyone.
Where's the
go?
Hi.
Just waving at people
Thank
on
you
YouTube,
very much
that's all.
for the talk, and congratulations on the book. I just wanted to ask, because I'm big on like energy management and sort of taking care of yourself. Obviously, you've become sort of launched into the public eye, both in the the positive and the negative sides. And I wanted to ask, what it is that you do to conserve your energy and take care of yourself? Is it like self-care and staying away from social media? I know you're not on Twitter and stuff like that, so I just wanted to ask about that.
Thanks for asking. Well, I mean, like, it had been a slow burn in terms of like, I'd had like a small taste of doing some public work before the book came out, but I was aware when the book came out that I was going to be like propelled into like a slightly different level. And I've turned out I don't really like the unpredictability of that. I knew it was like necessary for the book and it's what I signed up for, so I'm not gonna like complain. But yeah, I think for me, it's about having really strong personal boundaries. So yeah, I got rid of my Twitter. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I do understand why other trans people are on Twitter, but like, I only really kept it for a while because of the book and knowing I needed to push the book before it came out. But after like 10 years on it, when I'd had like 5 years of like just people saying things to you that no one would ever dare say to me in real life. So why am I exposing myself to this every day? And I was lucky to be in a position where I didn't need that platform anymore. So yeah, getting rid of social media and controlling my access to it is a big one. The other is, I have to be really conscious about burnout. So like, I come and do stuff around the book. Like at the moment, I have a really specific mission, if you like, which is that I wrote a book. I want as many people to read it as possible and engage with its thoughts on their own. So it's my job to direct people to the book and maybe like, do a talk, tantalize them, get them to buy it. And then other than that, I can't do everything. I'm not going to go on like, every time that I get a call to go on like BBC Radio 4, the Today programme on GMB, I can't go to like every trans march. I can't go to like every trans community event at the moment because like that would be at its capacity level. I think that's for anyone that's interested in like, I don't really consider myself an activist, but anyone that does any public work or community work or whatever, you do have to set your own limits because like you won't be any good if you completely burn out to anyone. So I've had to get really good at doing that. I'm also pretty lucky that like, in my day-to-day life, I create quite a cocoon. Like, I just I'm happily living in an echo chamber. You know, like how the right wing are always like, you live in your echo chamber. It's like, yeah, it's great. I don't really mix with anyone who cares about my transness in my day-to-day life. Like my friends, like either they are trans and we talk about it like on the inside way, but I don't discuss this stuff like, like in my free time anymore. And that's really important, is to not be always on, is to have other things about my life that I'm interested in. And so, I don't know if that answers your question. That's kind of how I've managed it. And I don't try not to buy into like too much of my own hype as well. Because I think one of the things I talked about when I talked about in the earlier talk, just remembered this, I talked about like when I felt so depressed and I felt so low. I think when I transitioned, I think a lot of trans people early in transition get like into activism or some kind of, because you're trying to resolve your inner stuff by like changing the world. And that's like quite noble, and I get where it comes from, and I did that. And you're like, oh, if I get this attention, I'll do this. But I remember like that was actually quite a dangerous space to be in, because I was trying to heal myself by doing like community work. But the trouble with that too is your ego takes over, because you're not able to just be like this isn't all on me. It's not my personal crusade. I'm not a savior of everyone else. And I've tried to, like, over the years, get rid of that attitude in myself and to just be like, I can do like a small amount. And there's, you know, I said that we're a small population, but there's enough of us that other people can do different things. Thanks.
We've got time for one more question.
I give such long answers.
Doctor at the back.
Thank you so much. That was a really powerful and valuable talk, and I really got a lot from it, so thank you so much for that. I've read your book. I think it's really, really valuable. Thank you. You talk in your book about how trans liberation is sort of impossible within a system of capitalism, which I'm fully on board with. I fully agree with you. I think capitalism is super evil, and that the wealthy elite should just go away, and let's take those resources and reuse them. But for me, in the work that I do, I work for Manchester Pride. We get loads of criticism for being overly corporate. We actually rely on that corporate sponsorship. But I want to be anti-capitalist. I want to do that work. I don't know how. So my question for you, really, maybe it's a really tough question, is, maybe in practical terms, how can we be more anti-capitalist in our trans liberation work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So you can't, like, capitalism is an all-encompassing economic system in which we live. So you can't, like, bring it down as an individual. Like, we all operate within it. I believe strongly, like, even though I say that, so the reason I say that it's impossible under capitalism is because the capitalist system fundamentally is designed to extract, like, excess wealth up to a top point, and that's just the case for the vast majority of the world's population. So it's just it is, like, as I say in the book, it's just a fact. However, obviously, I operate within a capitalist system. When you were talking about working for Manchester Pride, I used to work for Stonewall. And, like, Stonewall have plenty, like, work with plenty of organizations I didn't agree with. Some I was like, you know, there's a line to be drawn. Sometimes when I was working there, I'd be like, I think, yeah, I get we rely on the funding, but not from these people. And obviously the management wouldn't listen to me. But you know, everyone has their kind of moral, like, I have this too, like, moral judgments. I mean, I've been asked to give talks to places where I'm like, yeah, I don't really agree with what you do, so I'm not going to do it. And other times it's like, well, I'd rather reach your employees than not, and it's a judgment call every time. We operate within a capitalist system, but, like, there is such a thing, like, in the old school socialist things of the 70s, they talk about transitional demands, which is like, while we live in the current system, you can't just sit around waiting for capitalism to end. There's certain things that we could do in the here and now. When you talk about with the work that you do, I think it's about applying a lens to, like, LGBT work, and if it's working with a pride, it's to think about, like, whether or not organizations, people who offer you money or whatever, what their aim is with that. Like, obviously they're a business, they're there to make money, but some are deliberately doing it, for example, to mask really deeply exploitative practices that they have against their own workers, maybe against LGBT people in other countries. You know, maybe they're involved in, like, the containment and deportation of LGBT people. And it's actually very handy for them to have that association with a pride, with an LGBT organization, with a brand. And I think you have to apply a critical lens about whether or not you're going to lend that to them and who else you're excluding by your alignment with them. And that's a really difficult grey area, and I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but that's probably the best answer I have for you.
Can we have a big hand for our special speaker this afternoon? The incredible Faye. The book is out as a paperback. Sean, the book's out as a paperback this week, isn't it? 5th of May. So if you do want to get it, but get the hardback copy, get it ordered, get it bought. Okay, we are still to hear our closing comments from our CEO, Mark Fletcher. But first, Manchester Pride is committed to spotlighting grassroots organisations that support intersectional LGBTQ plus community groups that help make queer life in Greater Manchester so special. And it's a pleasure to welcome our final spotlight of the day. We're joined by Stephen from Stockport Pride and Ricky from Salford Pride to celebrate and learn more about these incredible groups. Can we have a big hand, please?
Thank you. I'm Stephen Bowyer. I'm the chairperson of Stockport Pride, pronouns he, him. There have been some amazing speakers today. don't know how to follow them all. But yeah, Stockport Pride, we've been celebrating the local LGBTQ plus community in Stockport since our first event in 2017, promoting equality, diversity and inclusion. We want to improve visibility of the community, amplify voices, and we're all run by volunteers. The story goes back to 2016 when there was a local restaurant in Stockport, and the people who ran it, they wanted to start a Pride event. They came to a social group that I was part of for the community to pitch their idea and see who was interested and everything. And everything looked like it was really interested. Everyone was interested. It looked like it was going to be a really good event, but they had some problems getting it going, various issues. So sadly, it didn't happen in 2016, but in 2017, myself and a couple of the others from the community group, we came together and we said, well, you know, there was a lot of interest in the event in 2016. Maybe we could try and make it happen in 2017. And between us, there was the three of us who mostly did it. We had experience of organising Pride events, contacts with performers, contacts with local organisations, and good links within the community between the three of us. And we were all volunteers, but we only started in March 2017. And then we were planning to hold the event in July. So we had like 4 months to do it and not much of a budget. So what could go wrong? Well, actually not much went wrong, thankfully, thanks to the knowledge of those people in vision. Also, we did get some funding thanks to the AXM Foundation, Manchester Pride, and also the local council. So at the end of July, it was our first event. We had about a dozen volunteers helping us. We had performers largely working for free on our first event. We had about 10 stalls, but it was important to us that it was representative of the local community. It was still being largely organised by the local community group. And also we had a stage named after one of the local community members who passed away after the Manchester Arena attack. Since then, we've had events in 2018, 2019. 2018 was our first parade. We were just walking through the town centre up to the marketplace, which is where we were holding our event. And also at the end, well, after our first event in 2017, we decided that we wanted to separate from the community group, create our own group. It would give us more freedom in terms of applying for funding and what we wanted to do. So we had our own constitution, we had a secretary, treasurer, chairperson, and so then we made plans for our 2018 event, and that all went quite smoothly. It did kind of scale up a bit compared to our first event, where in our second event we had 50 stalls, we had roughly 50 stalls, 50 volunteers, and to be able to scale that up, we had to move from having paper forms to having online forms. But as always, it was important that like members of the community were a part of running the event. And also, two of our volunteers from the event ended up joining the committee after our 2018 event, became our volunteer coordinator and our health and safety coordinator. So 2019, very wet day actually for our 2019 event, but it was quite well attended regardless. And in our parade, we had this massive flag that we borrowed from the European Pride Organisers Association, which is a Gilbert Baker original style flag, which had extra colours. And we had a bigger stage as well. But after our 2019 event, we decided to register as a charity to give us more accountability, transparency, and also the possibility of additional funding. By 2020, of course, there was the pandemic. We weren't able to hold our event as we'd hoped, but we did take part in Global Pride, which was an online event organised by Interpride, which was an association of Pride events from across the world. And we submitted a speech in solidarity with LGBTQ plus people around the world. And then in 2021, there was GM Digital Pride, because at the moment, I think every borough of Greater Manchester has their own pride. And there was a collaborative effort with all of them to put together this online stream. Greater Manchester Digital Pride, it was raising money for the LGBT Foundation and the George House Trust. And we submitted some videos of performers that were played throughout the day. And then, as the lockdowns were being lifted, we've started having some events in person again. The first one, we had a Halloween party where we tried to where we brought together a few community groups for a party. Then we're looking forward to 2022. There's still loads of work required. We are going to be starting to ask for volunteers to get involved with giving their time on the day. But we'll be back in Stockport Marketplace. But we're busy doing that, and it's all thanks to volunteers and their enthusiasm and dedication, which does count for a lot and really helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen from Stockport Pride, and now Ricky from Salford Pride to celebrate and learn more about Salford Pride.
Hello, thank you very much. Just before I start talking about Salford Pride, I'd just like to say on behalf of Salford Pride, thank you so much to all the really inspirational speakers, panellists, LGBT plus people who came up and shared your identities with us. I've definitely taken a lot away that we're going to sort of talk about at Salford Pride for our own event. So thank you all very much for that. My name's Ricky, and I'm the head of people at Salford Pride, and I'm a volunteer. A little bit, I think it's important to say about Salford Pride. Our history started about 11 years ago. We started as 3 friends who wanted to create this community event and celebrate LGBT plus identities, recognising a gap in Salford. Those 3 friends came together and started off what was the Pink Picnic. That's where our life as Salford Pride started. That first event in 2011, about 210 people turned up to that event, and then we continued to grow, continued to develop what we did as the Pink Picnic. The event continued to flourish over the 11 years that we've been sort of going in as an organisation. 2 years ago, in 2020, we applied to be a charitable organisation. Like Stephen said earlier, to increase our own transparency, our own governance and our own structures, we went through that application process and became a charity during the height of the pandemic. Salford Pride started its journey, like I mentioned, as a community event, and we very much keep community at the heart of our event. We're really proud to be led by a team of 12 volunteers. Nobody is paid to run Salford Pride as much as I would like to be. But those 12 volunteers that we currently have literally run everything from event organisation, stewarding, charity, you name it, we do it alongside our day jobs. And we're really proud to be a community event that's free and accessible to the LGBT plus people of Salford. Salford is obviously an area which has higher sort of social exclusion, social poverty, homelessness across than other areas of Greater Manchester. So we're really proud to have community at our focus. I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to briefly summarise, 2 minutes, briefly summarise some of the really busy work that we've been doing over the past 2 years, but there's a lot to fit in. So we've worked on a bi visibility project celebrating bi and the bi community. We've celebrated Trans Day of Visibility with a special event exploring gender diverse identities. Over the pandemic, we couldn't unfortunately get together last year, the year before in 2020, so we did a Pink Picnic Digital. We did a diversity festival spotlighting communities of marginalisation, giving a specific stage to those voices. We also did a community peer support group called Chit Chat, sort of promoting mental health, peer support, LGBT plus identities getting together. Very recently, we've also worked on an art exhibition celebrating LGBT plus identities over LGBT History Month, spotlighting trans and non-binary identities as well. This year, we're coming back with the Pink Picnic 2022 on the 25th of June. I think it's really important for me to say, go buy some tickets and come along to our event. I think it's going to be great. It's on the 25th of June. You can go to pinkpicnic.org.uk and buy your tickets. And we're really excited. It's our 11th Pink Picnic, and I think it's going to be a great one. We're going to sort of continue with our community work, encourage young LGBT plus people to be involved in our event, and so much more work with the community. I'm sorry I don't have more time to tell you all of the exciting things that we have done this past couple of years, but thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, as we draw to a close on what has been a truly, I think the word incredible, as I've used it quite a lot today. We've learnt a lot, we've seen a lot, we've talked a lot. In fact, there's a lot of networking to be done after the sessions today. But to close today's session, will you please give a big hand for our CEO, Mark Fletcher?
Thank you, everybody. Wow, it's really great to see so many people still here. It's been a long day, and we've had some really rich conversations. I'd like to thank everybody sat here for staying with us and being part of that conversation. I know it's been a packed schedule today, and it's been quite tight, and we've not been able to get through all of the questions that people would have liked to have asked. So I'm going to challenge my team. I'm going to say, if there are any questions that you did want to ask and you didn't get the opportunity to, please email them into us at info@manchesterpride.com with the hashtag from today, MP Conference 2022, and we'll do our best to get those questions to each of the panelists and speakers who were here today. Thank you for your patience with that one. I've been given 30 seconds, but I'm going to run over. It's my prerogative. So it's been quite a day, and I'm going to keep this short and snappy so you can all go home. I'd like to thank you all once again, just for your patience for us running over, but like I say, for being here. At the beginning of the day, I asked each of you to think about maybe one lesson or one practical tip, or I'm going to pour that all over myself, that you can take away from today and share with just one other person. The impact of that will be incredible if you can help us to push forward and continue to sustain Manchester and Greater Manchester and its pioneering spirit to push forward the agenda for greater inclusion and equality for LGBT plus people. It will have a large effect. Please do consider that and share where you can. I've been inspired by many people today, and there are a number of comments that stuck out to me personally. I heard we need to take a look at ourselves, individually and collectively as a community or series of communities. Ask, why are we here? If there is segregation in our own communities, how do we expect other people to accept us? Stop, listen, and learn. To move forward, we must learn and grow. They all struck me, and that's inspired me. These are all comments that we will spend time milling over at Manchester Pride as we continue our work, strive to be better, and do more to spark positive change within and outside of our communities. As an organisation, we'll continue to listen, we'll continue to help others in order for us to keep moving forward together. I pledge to you that we will continue to get better, we will continue to listen, we will continue to challenge until we can get to a place where we all feel a step closer to being our authentic selves all of the time. I really hope you had a positive experience today and that your workbooks are full of suggestions and ideas of what you can do personally as we work together to sustain Greater Manchester's legacy of pioneering LGBT plus rights. I've spoken enough. I said to keep it short. That's all from me, other than to wish you a safe journey home. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, our CEO of Manchester Pride, Mark Fletcher. Just to echo Mark's words there, yeah, please do have a safe journey home. Thank you so much. Hello to everyone who's been watching online on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for taking the time to stay with us all day and watch. I hope you're leaving today feeling really inspired, but armed with practical solutions to instigate change, to help Manchester Pride in their mission to improve lives of LGBTQ plus people in Greater Manchester and beyond. Please head down to the Key Bar for the final chance to chat and network with your fellow delegates and the Manchester Pride team. I'm Stephanie Hurst. Thank you so much and have a safe journey home. Good night.